Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of Burnside Council, opening at 7 p.m. We are still spaced appropriately according to COVID restrictions in the chamber, but we are really pleased to be able to welcome people into the gallery tonight, and they are seated in the corridor out behind the chamber. And we also welcome back public question time, although we do not have anyone coming with a question tonight. We have a very full agenda with one deputation. You have, as a reminder, a 3-minute limit on speaking time and only one question is permitted at a time. A reminder too about the new bell system with 2 bells at 2 minutes and multiple bells at 3 minutes. I remind you to be respectful of each other and their opinions during these debates and not interrupt the person speaking. Please stand for the acknowledgements. We acknowledge that the land we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the original custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the Kaurna people today. We also pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting and attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to those who sacrificed their lives for this country and its people. We pray for understanding and guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all who reside, study, work in or visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Please be seated. In the case of an emergency, an alarm will sound and then please follow the directions of the staff. I remind you that all council meetings are live streamed through the council's website and a copy of the agenda is also available by downloading from this website. Please continue to raise your hand to indicate that you wish to speak and use your microphones when speaking. Switch them off when you have finished. Use your meeting etiquette and protocols apply during the meeting, and I ask you now to turn off your mobile phones or place them on silent during the debates. We have 2 absences this evening, and apologies from Councillor Carbone and Councillor Henschke. Is there anyone who has a declaration of interest, please? Councillor Davey, you're... Yes, Councillor Piggott.
I'm not sure how this works. We're obviously just debating a elected member's allowance and benefits policy, and I did declare a conflict of interest, which I guess I do have. It's obviously appropriate that we do stay, debate and vote, which is what I'll be doing, but just as a point of record, I don't know whether...
Yeah, sorry, I didn't have... But basically for those people at home, technically we are all elected members, therefore we all do benefit from those allowance and benefits policy, but without us here to vote, there would be no change in the terms of reference, so we are required to be here to vote. But I take your point, thank you. Councillor Davey?
Thank you, Mayor. Mine was in relation to the entertainment and hospitality policy, whether we, because we get provided with a meal, whether we should declare
Not necessary to be declared.
Thank you.
Okay. Confirmation of minutes. Is there anyone who'd like to move the confirmation of minutes, please? Councillor Turnbull, you're moving, and Councillor Dawes had your hand up, seconding. All those in favour? Carried. As I said, no, we have to deal with this adjourned business first. Now, if those of you who remember, we had this telecommunications facilities advertisements report, which is on page 7. And at the point that we had to stop discussion on this, Councillor Davey had moved the motion. It had been seconded by Councillor Carbone, and I have checked to ensure that that is correct, that he's not here, it still stands. Councillor Hughes, Councillor Hubel, Councillor Jones and Councillor Lemon have all spoken. That means the only people who can speak or can pick it up at this point in time are Councillor Piggott, Councillor Lemon, Councillor Dawes, Councillor Turnbull and Councillor Davis. Councillor Henschke would have been, but she's not here. And Councillor Davey, of course, you will have the right to reply as the mover. So I seek anyone who wishes to speak on this motion. Councillor Piggott.
I'd like to ask a question, if I could, to the Chief Executive, who's just left the room. Yeah, no, that's fine. As I remember when we debated this last time, one of the questions came around not so much the charging of Telstra, but what controls we could place on them in regard to what they could put on the advertising. And I just wondered whether I could have a clarification of, obviously there's an ability to charge them, which is where the recommendation is, and but I'd just like to know what control we have, or could have, in respect to what they do put on these advertising.
You are all right with
Screens.
that, Mr. Cooper?
Through the Mayor, the advertising, I'll go back a step. The recommendation caters for both scenarios, both the current scenario, which is the current legal position whereby these units are not low impact facilities, but it also encompasses an example where the High Court might overturn that and they are indeed low impact facilities. Our best advice at this stage is that in either scenario, a permit would still be required under Section 222 of the Local Government Act, which concerns business purposes, and in this case, the advertising. I think the best answer to the actual question is that we would have some control over the form of advertising, and would be able to exercise that through conditions, but we would need to test that with our legal advisors before being absolutely definitive.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Question, Councillor?
Thank you, Mayor. Could I ask a question of Mr. Cooper in terms of the motion that has been moved and whether there are any negative implications, or that this is doable and within reasonable limits for the City of Burnside? Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll refer that to Mr. Cooper.
Thank you for the question. Through the Mayor, Councillor Davey, there are no issues with the amended motion as it's put. The 10,000 per installation is perfectly within Council's delegation to set that fee, and it doesn't need to be tied to any reasonable test. So absolutely the recommendation's fine.
Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question, if I can, at this point in time. Noting in the info doc that Telstra has asked that Council delay the decision on this matter until after the High Court appeal has been resolved. Can the administration give any additional feedback on whether or not that is absolutely prudent or not at this point in time, and whether or not we should move potentially a formal motion and delay this a bit further?
Through the Mayor, it's open to the Council to either not make a decision now or to proceed. Our advice is that the benefit in setting a fee now is that in the event that Telstra does make an application, there is actually a fee, whereas it's arguable that if they made an application in the absence of one, then there's no income for the Council. In the event that the Council does set fees now, and the High Court determination sheds light on the situation which might change Council's view about the quantum of the fee, there's certainly the Council can revisit that at any time.
Councillor Lemon, you have a question as well?
Yes, I do. I remember when we had this conversation last time, I asked about light spillage. Do we know where these 9 payphones are going to go? Do we have an idea of that?
Through the Mayor, the units are already in place. All but one are on arterial roads. The one that isn't on an arterial road is the unit in Dulwich. There are two on Portrush Road and another 6 that are on arterial roads.
Yes, there's no one else waiting, so you can ask another question.
Can we, I'd like to know about light spillage for any neighbours. There are residences on Portrush, Glen Osmond, and certainly in Dulwich. So can we find out if it's going to be an issue? I'd just like to know if it's going to be an issue for the neighbours, that's all.
Through the Mayor, previously the Department of Transport and Infrastructure, as it was known, undertook a safety audit in relation to the units, and there was a component that concentrated on illumination. So the units are appropriate in relation to illumination insofar as it relates to safety at least.
I can assure you that the two on Glen Osmond Road that I'm very familiar with, one is right outside Foodland, Frueville, and the other, so there's no issue, and the other one is outside the post office up the top of Glen Osmond Road. So they're both outside businesses, and I'm aware of ones on Portrush Road are similarly placed outside of businesses as opposed to houses. I may be wrong about one of them.
Through the Mayor, and further to that, with one exception, we've recorded no complaints. We did have complaints about the unit by Frueville, but that was from a sightline point of view and has since been rectified through its movement.
Right, are there any further questions, or does anyone else wish to speak on this motion? Otherwise, I will return it to Councillor Davey to sum up.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Mayor.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you everyone for your input. I think we've all duly considered this. Council's been approached by the telecommunications companies who want to use our roads in the City of Burnside to display commercial advertising. We don't have a fee structure currently, so we're initiating that, and we've heard tonight that we really should go ahead and do this. I think it's quite reasonable with the figures that are made in advertising. I mean, we don't know what they are, but you can assume, well, I don't know, but we can assume that huge profits are made, and I think it's reasonable for us to recoup our costs and to establish a $10,000 fee per installation. So I hope you'll approve this tonight and support this motion.
Those in favour? Those against? So it's carried. There apparently was a question submitted before the time limit for public question time. I was only just made aware of it a few minutes ago. So we will invite Stephen Allison to ask his question. Mr. Allison, is Magnus going to get... Helen, thank you. He's coming.
Hello. Hello.
Mr. Allison, if you could just state your name and your where you live, your suburb, not your full address.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm Dr. Stephen Allison. I live in Laurel Avenue, Linden Park. And I'd like to ask a brief question. I'd like to firstly applaud the Trigens Master Plan, including the new plantings of native trees, which I know was ranked highest among the community's priorities. I'd just like to highlight a few old trees that are going to be removed and briefly ask the question.
Allison, it does need to come to a question.
The question I'd like to ask is, if it's true that melaleuca have antibiotic properties and are used by koalas, could the old trees be maintained for medicinal purposes until new melaleucas can be grown? Thank you.
Sorry, just repeat in the street,
Sorry?
what street it was?
I didn't hear that, Mayor.
In what particular street are you talking about these trees?
It's referring to the master plan for Trigens Oval.
Oh, okay.
Around the master plan, there is a growth of melaleuca trees.
Thank you. Now I understand.
Thank you.
Through Madam Mayor, I'll refer that to Ms Taylor.
Through the Mayor, to answer your question, so our understanding is those Melaleuca trees are quite significantly near the end of their life. They've been earmarked for removal through the Trigens Oval Management Plan that is going out for community consultation subject to Council's approval tonight, and maybe that could be something that could be encouraged for you to engage through that process.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, Mayor.
We do have one deputation this evening, and that is from Ms. Sue Ross from Eastwood Community Centre.
Thank you.
Sue, I think you've done this before, but I'll just remind you, you have 5 minutes with a warning bell at 4 minutes.
Yep.
And then if you wouldn't mind remaining, and so that if anyone has questions to ask you, then they have that opportunity to do that. So just, if again, you could state your name and where you're from.
Yep. Thank you very much, Mayor. Oops. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Sue Ross, and I'm the Director for Eastwood Community Centre, which is at 95 Glen Osmond Road, Eastwood. As you'd see from our proposal, and more than likely your knowledge, Eastwood Community Centre has been a viable community centre in the city of Burnside for over 43 years. It's a community centre that currently runs an approximately 65 programs and activities per month with about 1,900 participants. Our centre is a not-for-profit organisation incorporated under the Incorporations Act and has a management committee which sets the strategic direction and financial accountabilities. Members of this committee have high-level qualifications in a broad range of areas such as legal profession, financial sector, marketing, public relations, disability services and education. The centre has a strong strategic plan and a business plan. Financial management of the centre is something which I'm sure that you'd like to know about. The finances of the centre are actually overseen by a financial subcommittee that was actually formed in 2018. And this committee comprises members of the board, who includes an accountant, and we also have an external accountant who provides independent advice to the subcommittee and to the management committee as needed. Financial subcommittee actually works on the preparation of an annual budget, looks at monthly financial accountings. In 2020 has reviewed the financial accounting processes, procedures and practices, and is looking at the long-term future viability of the centre, certainly with a focus for retention of larger reserves than what we currently have, which address annual leave, long service leave, asset replacement and long-term maintenance plan. Currently the centre has what's equivalent of 3.1 staff, and it might sound really large for an organisation which is only one building, but it's 65 programs. So let me break it down. I'm employed as a full-time director that oversees the operations of a centre on a daily basis. It also supports its management committee and its strategic direction. I'm funded under a 6-year contract through the Department of Human Services, and we have 2 other staff which are funded under a 3-year contract with the Department of Industry and Skills, and then also contributing to that are smaller contracts that we actually receive, or grants that we receive, to employ some administration staff. We have 3 administration staff that come to the centre and work in part-time basis on an 8-hour shift or a 15-hour shift, and they actually come under a disability wage subsidy where the centre actually only pays for their on-costs on a weekly basis. Approximately 30% of the centre's income comes from programs, from fundraising and also from room hire. Our grant program does make up about 70% of our funding, but it is very specifically driven towards programs and the outcomes that are tied to specific funding contracts. As I said, we have our DHS grants, we have our DIS funding. Within those grants, we make an allocation of approximately 18 to 20% of those funds for administration and a management component, together with the actual cost of delivery of programs, which includes the salary and any resources around programs. So, why did we ask the City of Burnside for $60,000? Why didn't we actually specifically ask you to fund specific programs? Because what we knew that we would do if we went, we want $5,000 for this and $5,000 for that, you would cherry pick. And what we actually would like you to do is to provide the centre with a flexibility of a bucket of funding which would go across areas such as our program area, our support services, the work that we do with people with disability, and then also to support some infrastructure and maintenance. We have got some figures against those areas. We would like to allocate, of the $60,000 applied for, $12,000 towards our program area, $25,000 to support our support services. Over the last 12 months, we've had an approximate 100% increase in the number of support services that are now run from the centre. And we also would like $8,000 for our disability program and $15,000 for infrastructure. Infrastructure is a continuous thing that we have to deal with in a building that's about 140, 50 years old. We are looking at our long-term maintenance plan, but we're only responsible for the internal structures of the centre. Things that we come across on an annual basis are things like replacing the toilet systems because they were 25 years old. Currently, we're looking at a cost of $12,000 to replace air conditioning in our centre in the main hall, and we would like to have a small amount of reserves to do things like painting and other things. We note that Council has provided a recommendation to fund us for $26,000 to support the infrastructure of our support services. This is a high need area which we are looking at the moment. Numbers in our classes for support service range from 25 to 60 or 70 people that are coming, and we also note that within that there is also the discussion within the paper that the Council proposes that they would like us to look at our financial management structures and our future accountabilities. We're more than welcome to do that. Our board is open to any discussions around that and to take any recommendations from the Council. We would therefore request that rather than the $26,000, you provide the centre with the opportunity to meet what is an increasing demand by community and by other members and by other support organisations, rather than the $26,000 which has been recommended just for a specific program.
Thank you, Sue. Did allow you to go on a little longer. Is there anyone who wishes to ask Sue a question now, please? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you for your presentation this evening. I did note in the report that I think there was around 80% of 70 to 80% of the users are from the city of Burnside. I'm just wondering, I guess, whether you'd also got support from, I guess we're quite close to the City of Unley in that location, other councils as well to seek their support?
City of Unley provided funding to the centre but hasn't provided any direct funding to the centre for the last 8 years. And it has the same, that it has 5 community centres within its area. When its funding was taken away from Eastwood, it had just had a 25% reduction in funding to its community centres. We have gone back to seek some community grants through them, but we've been rejected around their demand within their own local area as well. A number of our programs that we run, the Be Connected program and our IT program, allows us to deliver across the broader eastern suburbs. So we have a Be Connected program where we deliver City of Unley, City of Burnside, St Peters, Norwood. I think we even went out to Clearview the other day to talk to a progress group. Thank you.
Councillor Piggott. Was that your hand up, Councillor Davis?
Yeah, thanks for coming in. Just on the money, you spelt out where the 60 came from. Thank you for that. And perhaps it's not as clear cut as this, but the recommendation of the 26 sort of mirrors the second item, which was support.
Yeah.
The first was the other 3 were the program for 12, a program generally on programs, I think. Well, what I'd like you to do, can you explain the other 3 for me? I think you did touch on it, but and perhaps what would happen if you didn't get it.
Okay, so an example is we've requested $15,000 worth of infrastructure and maintenance. Currently, to paint the hall, we have to find $8,000. So within our maintenance budget, what we're coming up across at this time is large and major infrastructure items. Our air conditioning was working in the hall till about 2 weeks ago. It's 23 years old and the parts cannot but now be replaced. To replace those 2 new air conditioners will cost us $12,000. That's what the current quote is. There are areas of the centre which have some significant salt damp and need continuous painting. So a continuous painting is sort of the infrastructure cost for that. The programs that we are talking about are work with people with disabilities. We work with a number of organisations and a number of members of the community who have disabilities. Examples of that is where we have a community program where we utilise our community bus, which we have. We go out one week, we do some activities outside, and then the next week those students come back and actually do some IT work and do some other work in the centre. That program would support the cost of utilising of our bus, and it would also go towards some support staff that need to go out with those people with a disability. Our programs with our garden and reducing social isolation are offered for free at this time. Any of the items that we require maintenance or upgrading, or we need to plant some new things or buy equipment from our garden, we have to find from our own reserves. That program is actually offered for free. The programs reducing social isolation are our Around the Table program, which we offer for free. Our adult education program, where we work with people that are going back into the workforce. They have a disability in the context that they have a work injury and they are now reskilling to move into a different line of employment. It's a longer term program and we don't have enough funding, or we offer that funding at free or a very low cost to those people. And the social isolation other program that we actually run relates around people making connections. So we have a program where we have volunteers that then work with some older people in the community to be able to bring them into the centre to reduce their isolation at home.
Councillor Davis. The next person was Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Sue. You have a lot of information over there. Now, just go back to Councillor Pickett's question. I just wanted to get it right in my own mind. We have $25,000 for support services. Did you say $25,000 infrastructure and the remaining $10,000 was other programs? Just want to get those numbers right, if you could.
$20,000 for programs, $15,000 for infrastructure and maintenance, and $25,000 for the support services.
So what was what was the first one? The first one was?
Programs.
Programs, okay. Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Sue, for coming along tonight. I just wondered what growth you're having in the centre and how that's progressing. I noticed there's a domestic violence support service, and we know that's increasing in the community. So I wondered, with that area and any other areas, what sort of growth the centre's experiencing?
So the change that we've actually seen over the last 18 months are in areas of more women fronting at the centre, asking for money, asking for food, more homeless people who are migrating from the city or are just actually in the area coming in for that. So the domestic violence program is also twofold. It is to address that issue of more people or more women coming into the centre that we have identified who are already within programs, but also those that are coming in requesting financial funding or food. The second in that sort of area is the work that is also being done across South Australia and across the state, and just raising the profile of organisations who provide support services or are able to provide a safe place for women to go to. Sorry, the second part of your question was really related to that one. So growth in our other areas. So an example of the extreme growth that we experienced during the COVID period was, prior to COVID, we used to run one AA meeting on a Sunday morning, and that would attract anywhere between 45 and 70 people on a Sunday morning. And we used to run one Gamblers Anonymous meeting. During COVID, all of the AA sessions and all of the AA places actually closed down. And just when COVID restrictions came off, we had a demand and we had an increase in people coming to Sunday. And then we had an increase in people who were coming into the centre asking whether we would actually have a space to be able to host people to come into the garden. What happened with that is that we were able to offer a space within the garden when COVID was on and the centre was actually closed down. These people were meeting in public parks, but they wanted a safer place. They weren't meeting as an AA group, they were just meeting as individuals. When we opened, we had a request from 4 of the support volunteers if we would have a space available to have another AA meeting. What happened was, in a very short period of time, we ended up hosting 6 AA meetings over the week, with an average of between 50 and 80 people that were coming to the centre. What's now happened is that we now offer AA meetings Monday, Wednesday, Friday and Sunday. An offshoot of those meetings has been the interaction with people at the centre, which has now identified a group which is a group of women and men, which is called Food Addicts in Recovery, that very specifically deal with people and their addictions or issues of bulimia, anorexia or overeating. An offshoot of the AA meetings is that AA, people who come to those, or fellows who come to that group, do not necessarily just have to be addicted to alcohol. What we've actually experienced over the period is that more people with drug problems have come. So an offshoot of that now, of the AA meetings at the centre, is that on a Thursday afternoon we now run a 1.5-hour Narcotics Anonymous support group. So the average number of people coming on a Monday is anywhere between 25 and 40. Wednesday has an average people of about 50 to 70 people that might come to an AA meeting. Narcotics Anonymous has about 30 people on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. Our Gamblers program on Tuesday night has increased threefold with the number of people that are in attendance, but also the number of people where they are receiving telephone support with the volunteer that runs that program. AA on Sunday is around about anywhere between 30 and 50 people. Friday AA is a smaller group, might attract maybe anywhere between 20 to 30 people. Another offshoot of the AA programs is that on a Thursday afternoon, so I have Narcotics in the Hall, and then I also have an AA women's only support group. And the women's only support group is actually supported by a psychologist who is actually a fellow of AA. So that is a fairly intensive sort of group of support, and that's a small group at this stage of about 18 women that come to that group. So that's a demand. An example of where we are being approached seems to be coming from service providers who are recognising the work that we are doing, and an example of where we have a number of women who come to our centre in this last fortnight has been to have a discussion with staff around how could the centre support a group of people from the Glenside area who have schizophrenia. So they have a group of something like 70 people who they work with in a network of people with schizophrenia, mental health issues, and they are looking for that group to be able to work with somebody to reduce their social isolation, to look at engaging them in community-based programs or in a program that could then bring those people into another venue other than where they currently are or within their homes. Organisations such as Hutt Street Centre, Uniting Communities are coming back to the centre asking whether we can increase our program for people with disabilities. Uniting Communities at the moment, their policy is that they are no longer undertaking group programs. So our centre would run a program, they would come to our centre and utilise our centre for a group program. That program no longer is in existence. They're not going to run that program again. And the people and the participants of that program would like us to pick that program up to actually run it. Something that we're thinking about. Certainly all of the members of that group actually come to the centre to participate in other activities.
Councillor Lemon?
Who actually runs those groups? Who are, you said volunteers. Who are these people?
So every one of the AA groups, there are 4 overriding volunteers of AA who are fellows and who are mentors and who work and coordinate the materials. They come in, they support the groups, they support individuals via phone contacts or initial contacts. The centre provides the support in the context of room hire. We also advertise those programs, and a staff member is available to talk to people, and we make referrals to other agencies and support services. So our work is very much around Those people being new to the centre, being able to engage them other than just in the AA meeting. A lot of them that come to, a number of them are long-term unemployed, long-term addiction, are fairly socially isolated within their communities. So an offshoot and an example of the work that we have done with AA is that we now are running a yoga meditation session prior to AA, which is actually taken by an AA fellow. And then we also have the Women's STEP program, which has actually come out of that. And that's actually come out of the work of our engagement with those volunteers. So we have 5 strategic volunteers who work predominantly within the AA programs.
So this is a quick question.
Yeah.
Do your staff run any of these programs?
My staff are engaged in 2 of 7 programs at the moment.
And they are?
The Women's STEP program and then also the Narcotics Anonymous program.
Okay, thank you.
So can I just ask you a question? I believe you do IT support for individuals as well in the community, for elderly in the community.
So,
can you expand on that?
So our information technology program, we deliver training for people to upgrade their skills if they are looking to improve their skills to re-enter the workforce. We provide a whole range of information technology. We receive Commonwealth funding for the Be Connected program. The Be Connected program is to engage people over the age of 65 to engage in new technologies. I have 2 staff that are currently project funded, and they deliver programs on e-safety. So currently, in the last 18 months, they have delivered to over 600 people within the eastern region that are over 65 on e-safety. We provide one-to-one support. So if you don't know how to use a digital phone, or you want to learn how to use your laptop, or you want to learn how to use your iPhone or your whatever, that you can actually come to the centre and you can receive one-to-one support with a volunteer. So we have trained about 30 what we call digital volunteers who work at the centre, or they actually go out into nursing homes, or they go out into the aged care lifestyle villages, and our staff provide that they provide and deliver that IT program.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to ask a question of Sue? Otherwise, I'll take this opportunity to thank you for your comprehensive presentation.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to go through, we don't have any petitions, and I'm going to run through each of the reports to find out who wishes to withdraw them. So first one is 11.1, Chief Executive Officer's report. Councillor Davey. Updated risk management. No one, so I'll seek a mover. Councillor Hughes. Seconded, Councillor Cornish. All those in favour? Carried. Mid-year budget update. I seek a mover then. Councillor Lemon. Seconded, Councillor Jones. All those in favour? Penfold Park Draft Master Plan. Councillor Davis. Busking and live music in the City of Burnside. You'll move it, Councillor Hubel. Seconded by Councillor Hughes. All those in favour? Carried. Eastwood Community Centre. Councillor Davis. Trigens Oval Master Plan. Councillor Jones. I think he just got his hand up before you, Councillor Hubel. City Master Plan. Councillor Davey, I think you had your hand up first. Just. Mayor's report. I seek a mover. Thank you, Councillor Hughes, followed by a seconded Councillor Turnbull. All those in favour? Carried. Policy review. Elected member allowance. Councillor Dawes. Credit card policy. Councillor Piggott. Procurement policy. Councillor Davey. Entertainment and hospitality. No one, so do I have a mover then? Councillor Piggott, seconded Councillor Lemon. All those in favour? Carried. Oops. I'm going to move back, and we have, thankfully, in a way, passed a number of recommendations already. But because the practice has been recent that we would do someone who comes in and does a deputation, we've done that first. So with the seek leave of you, I'll ask us to debate that one first. And is that okay with everybody? Okay. Seek leave? All right, thank you. The other suggestion I was going to make is that we then move to the rest of the reports, the remaining 3 out of the 4. And the reason for that is that they have to be with the results of this, the recommendations have to be with the Ombudsman before our next council meeting. So I would like to make sure we do those first, get them done before we go back to the rest. If that's okay with you, I'd like to move, certainly, you know, that's the way we just need to do that. We have to do it. Is it required? Yep.
Through you, Madam Mayor. It'd be ideal if we could flow from 11.6 and then flow straight on to the
11.10.
the policy matters with the.
All right, I'll seek leave. All those in favour? We've got to get them done, and I just don't want to be doing them at 11 o'clock, worst case scenario tonight, okay? So, all right, thank you very much. So we will start with Eastwood Community Centre, which is Councillor Davis.
If I don't move it, is somebody else, who are we going in?
I believe there's an alternative motion, but...
I certainly sent in an alternative
You
motion.
did?
Yeah, if I can move that as a starting point, because I...
Councillor Davis, are you okay with that? You did have your hand up first.
You did, and then I think...
I'm going to run it.
Yep.
Ready? I like Councillor Corn, you know, it's a difficult thing, but I think listening to Sue, and I'd like to move this, as generally I've seen, I suppose on behalf of Sue in many ways, because I've seen the way that she's run that community centre and the way that, and the programs that she delivers, and the technicality and the way that she runs it, I think, and the way that she speaks about it, I think does deliver for the community. It's very, very difficult for us to understand what exactly the outcome is. And it's very difficult for us to understand exactly what the outcome of our own services internally in the city of Burnside are. I mean, if we have Pilates or yoga or senior exercise and things like that at, say, the Dulwich Community Centre, all we know is that we delivered it. It's very difficult for us to then understand whether we're getting the best bang for buck. And listening to what Sue has said tonight, and also I know that this has been an issue that's come up between, you know, for especially in the last council meeting, is we looked at Eastwood Community Centre quite carefully, and there was a lot of concerns about duplicity in running projects, you know, running sessions that the City of Burnside would also offer. So there was a double up on the service provision. But to my mind, $60,000 for the types of services that they deliver and the quantity, and I think that they have a huge positive benefit on the community. But at the end of the day, it's very difficult for me to even judge what that is. But how could I possibly even judge what? And it's about, I think that's the difficulty of this role, is to trying to determine whether you should take money from people in our community and repurpose it here. And in my view, I think that the Eastwood Community Centre, if we did that here, that we would benefit the community as a whole. They've asked for the $60,000, and I think that it has merit to it. And I'm obviously not, I wasn't intending to come into this council meeting and move that way, but listening to what Sue has said tonight, I feel confident that that's the right, way forward for the City of Burnside. So I hope that you support this motion.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Davey, you wish to speak now or hold on till later?
No, I'm happy to speak now, thanks. Yes, I endorse what Councillor Davis has said. I'm very impressed with the work that the Eastwood Community Centre does. Without wanting to demean what I'm saying, they look after a lot of people and services and provide care for a lot of matters that fall through the cracks otherwise, that aren't dealt with by a lot of the major funding programs. And in a lot of ways they complement a lot of the work that we do in our programs here and augment that. So I think this is entirely reasonable for them to have this allocation of money to, and hearing the need they have there just for basic amenities, you know, in our climate, to not have functioning air conditionings for heating and cooling, and to do, you know, jobs that are really basic like painting. I think we really need to help them out, so I'm happy to support this.
Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I have a question, if I may. In terms of there is a lease on this building as far as I know. So I have two questions really, they are related. One is, when was the lease last renewed? And the other is, I have no idea what the building actually belongs to council. So when there's talk of infrastructure, I believe that infrastructure is our responsibility. Can someone enlighten me about what, like things like air conditioning and whatnot? Can I get some information on that, please?
I'll accept those two questions because they are deeply related. Thank you.
Through Madam Mayor, if I can refer that to Ms Taylor.
Through the Mayor, I would have to take on notice when the lease was renewed. However, it's a peppercorn lease, and as per all our other lease arrangements in a similar manner, the leasee is responsible for all the internal, maintenance of the infrastructure. However, if it was in a similar way to, say, the Sporting Club leasing the hub, then we would take over something major. It's my understanding.
So, maybe I'm asking you the same clarification question. So the building itself, the maintenance of the building itself is our responsibility, but the internal fittings like toilets, showers, air conditioning, etc., is the responsibility of the centre.
Through the Mayor, that is my understanding, yes.
Does that clarify it for you too, Councillor Lemon, or not? Please ask another question. I have no other hands, so...
It does, but that doesn't clarify for me when the lease was last negotiated. And for this funding proposal, to me, a really good way out of this in the longer term is for council to take up the responsibility of the internal maintenance, like air conditioning and toilets and plumbing and whatnot. So I just think that that's a possibility for us to look after. That then takes that need for funding away and keeps it with us where we, anyhow I'm speaking to it now, that keeps it, and I will continue if I may, that keeps it with us, and it should, because it is our building and we should have responsibility, and that means that the volunteer, because the centre is actually run unlike any other community centre in Burnside. It's run with volunteers and some paid staff, and they could get on with their programs, because my understanding is that the programs that were talked about tonight are actually all funded from a variety of state government sources. So when you're looking at things like AA or looking at other disadvantaged groups, all of those will be funded through human services or health or any number of disability sections. So if there is an alternative, in fact, in this, and that is that council takes over the maintenance of the building in the long term, and the community centre just gets on with the stuff that they do, which is running of programs. And I think that we need to investigate that as an option. Otherwise, we'll be here every year having this same conversation. So I think that we need to have a different relationship with Eastwood Community Centre, where there's very clear lines of who does what. So in that sense, I'm not going to support this because I don't think we've really explored our options properly.
Councillor Jones, then Councillor Piggott.
This is a follow-on from Councillor Lemon's question, and I don't necessarily expect an answer tonight, but they talked about painting all the time due to salt damp. Well, salt damp is surely structural because the building walls are sucking moisture out of the ground. So surely that's our responsibility to at least put a damp course in. I know it's difficult in an historic building, but that does sound like a council responsibility to me.
Councillor Piggott. Sorry, it was, it sort of...
Through Madam Mayor, I'll take it in the manner it was delivered to me. I'll take the thought on notice, and I do agree with you that if there is a salt down issue, that is a structural issue of the building that council should be looking after.
Accepting that as a question rather than a debate. All right, now I'll move to Councillor Piggott.
Would you consider an amendment? I'd like to replace number 3 with that council requests that administration work with Eastwood Community Centre to implement strategies to establish stronger financial sustainability. Full stop.
Councillor Davis, how do you feel about that? I don't see a great difference. Yeah. Would you be happy with that?
That'd be great.
Yeah, that's fine. Can you write it out?
Yeah, we need to see it on the screen before we can...
Requests administration to work with Eastwood Community Centre to implement strategies to establish stronger financial sustainability. And lose prior to any further considerations. Oh, sorry, yeah, you'd lose that as well. Yep. Doesn't need council at the front.
Just get it finished writing it up.
No, you took out the wrong lot. I want financial management practices to go, but establish stronger financial sustainability to stay. Yep, and then take out, thank you. And lose prior to any further? Yep, thanks.
Councillor Davis, are you happy with that amendment? All right, so it's not a formal one. I think they are.
So it's a
similar.
variation or whatever we call
Variation rather than an amendment.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Now, I believe the CEO wishes to make comment.
And it's just about being very clear about our wording and resolutions. I'd prefer it to say that council work with the Eastwood Community Centre, because you're actually, my job is to do what you tell me. In essence, you are telling me to work with them, not requesting me whether I have a choice in the matter. I'm quite serious with that. So it's that council work with the community centre.
You're happy with that, Councillor Davis? What about Councillor Davey? Yes. All right. Now, did you wish to speak any further at this point in time? Okay.
Look, I'm a little bit like Councillor Davis. I wasn't unhappy with the report and with the recommendation. However, I think what came out of the report is a couple of things. One is that the organisation does need support. 2 is we've identified that there does need to have something happen for future stronger financial sustainability. And the change I've asked for there puts us in that mix, works with Eastwood rather than saying, look, we think you've got a problem, go and get someone to sort it out. It puts us at their shoulder, which hopefully avoids Councillor Lemon's genuine and quite correct issue that we might be doing this every year if we don't. The 60 versus 26, you know, I just feel looking at what wouldn't happen as a result, listening to what wouldn't happen as a result in this year, I think it would be a shame. These people are are working in areas that actually don't get serviced particularly strongly elsewhere. It's our building, it's in our patch. 73% of the people who use it are our people. And so while I'd like to see it sorted so that it didn't need 60 grand every year, I feel it's appropriate this year to provide that 60 and then work with them to see how we might pull that back in future years. Thank you.
Next is Councillor Jones. You're asking a question, or are you now speaking?
I'll ask a question. How's your zero rate increase task going with this motion?
Through Madam Mayor, I'm actually in Council's hands here because it's up to Council where they set their rate rise at. That was the intention. However, I am, and perhaps I'm erring and supporting the debate, but I am very supportive of Councillor Piggott's position on this matter. I think this is a sound community initiative.
Right, Councillor Dawes, you wish to speak or ask a question? And then it's Cornish and Turnbull.
I'd like to speak. Thank you. Yeah, I'm the same as Councillor Davis. I thought Sue's presentation tonight was excellent. She's a very good operator, there's no question about that, and she sells her case so well. So I'm not surprised that I've changed my mind. I wasn't going to go as high as 60, so I think Sue's in the audience, she'll probably hear me say that. But I've been fortunate to visit the centre on 3 or 4 occasions over the last 2 years, and I've seen their work at hand, so I've got nothing but praise for what they do. Sorry, yes, I do apologise for Councillor Jones, but they do take on the tough social programs, and they do it with a lot of passion as well, and you can sense that in the way that Sue says it, and also her board and her staff. So I will be supporting Councillor Davis's motion.
Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Worship. I would like to offer an amendment. It's from my original, and it's the end part to number 2, regarding the actually seeking a report after the money's been spent on what it's actually been spent on, so we've got some assurity about the outcomes. I understand what's going around the chamber, and I'm quite happy with how 3 sort of panned out, especially with the 60. But yeah, I was just wondering whether or not I can add that little bit on.
I need to see what it is first.
Yeah. Do you need me to send it to you? Oh, you've got it?
Going to ask the mover and seconder whether they would be willing to accept that as another variation.
Why don't you just run the amendment? Because I think it's fine, but I think it's too much to. Because I agree with, I vote for it. But.
So run with the amendment. Okay.
I mean, it's asking for something new rather than tweaking.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of implicit in the strategies and the working with the council with finances, but at the same time, what you really actually expect is an expectation that there'll be, like we do with our grant money, that the grant has to be accountable. Yes. So.
And acquittal.
Yeah.
Can't you say with the provision of an outcomes report?
I also want the financial report and declaration. It's an obligation attached to the funding.
It's up to the mover and seconder.
So I'd like to propose that amendment just to provide some accountability on now $60,000 and inform, I suppose, council in future about where this funding goes and how it's actually been spent. So that's my amendment to the motion.
So that would be point 4.
I know it's added on to the...
Oh, added on to what?
As it says. The added to point 2.
Oh, added on to point 2. Yeah. Like you, I'd like to see it first. Might take out both. You've got 3 things there. Technically. Okay.
That's okay.
With an outcomes report, a financial report and declaration. A financial report and declaration detailing. Yes, I know, I've got to get a seconder. Yeah, now I seek a seconder. Is there a second? Councillor Hughes, you happy to second it? Thank you. Right, now, people who are still to speak are Councillor Turnbull. Do you wish to speak to the amendment? Oh, sorry, I apologise. You have, we can reserve it. That, I was assuming it because you didn't say anything, so Councillor Turnbull.
To the amendment, but first of all, a point of clarification.
So you've got a question?
Is this, well, it's clarification, is it 60,000 for 3 years?
No.
Or 1 year?
1.
1 year, okay, that's clarifying. I do have one concern for me, and that's that there are 2 community centres.
So is this a question or you're speaking?
I'm speaking.
Okay.
There are 2 community centres at the Burnside Council area, and they're so disparate. One's dynamic and offering versatile programs to vulnerable people. Other ones are a run-down, neglected building. My question is, does Dulwich receive any funding? The Dulwich Community Centre.
So it's another question. Through you, can I refer that to...
Yeah, through Madam Mayor, I'll refer that to Ms Taylor.
Through the Mayor, Dulwich receives funding towards programs that it runs. So Strength for Life, it receives programs, funding towards other programs such as the boxing program and that kind of thing. So there's specific programs that are run through there. Is that what you were?
Yeah, how much? Do you mind?
Oh,
how much do they get?
Strength for Life costs us approximately $50,000 a year to run. And I would need to take on notice the exact amounts of the other ones, but I would say it's probably in regards to another 10,000.
But there's no staffing costs involved in running that centre, or are there?
There are staffing costs involved running that centre, that's correct.
Included.
Yeah, but I would need to break down what the percentage, so one of, I guess, the community coordinators, I think it was about 0.5 of his time, runs Dulwich.
Is that possible to come out as an email for everybody?
Through the Mayor, I can arrange that breakdown.
Thank you.
Councillor Hubel, do you wish to speak? Now, you had your hand up before the amendment came through, that's all. No. Not now? Okay. Councillor Turnbull, could you just turn your microphone off, please? Yep. Anyone now who wishes to speak? It looks like it's got to come back to you, Councillor Hughes.
I was just going to say that I'm happy to support this because I think there's actually a lot of vulnerable people that use that facility, and I can see value in this. And I think it is a draft budget, so we will still get the opportunity to comment on that, and there'll be the opportunity to prioritise this spending over other spending, and I guess it's an opportunity to make an assessment. Now it's not a commitment to the actual money, it's just to see where that draft budget lands and actually to go out to the community as well. So I think it's worthy, and I also appreciate the amendment that was put forward because I think it holds people to account and will also give us the opportunity to review that before the next budget.
Councillor Lemon.
I've spoken, but I've got another question. And the question actually is about our community grants. What is the maximum? I know we've got a tiered set of grants that are there for different things. what is the maximum, like, could the air conditioning, for instance, and this is now a series of questions, could the air conditioning go into any of those grant programs that we put out annually? And the other is, are there other things in those grant programs that this would cover?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to refer that to Ms Taylor.
Through the Mayor, our community grants, the maximum we offer is $5,000, but we don't fund capital. And I'm sorry, I missed the second part of the question.
So the program grant stuff.
Yeah, maximum. Yes, and Eastwood has been successful in gaining those grants in the past.
Councillor Hughes?
Sorry, just to clarify, because I thought that there was funding for the Dulwich air conditioning out of some...
That was a you fund me, you know, the community funding
okay.
project where, you know, people put forward their ideas for their
And
local
then it
community.
gets voted on, okay.
And then they voted on it, and that was as a result of voting. So it didn't come through the grants program. Your neighbourhood budget, yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I just didn't have the right language, but yes, yes. All right, now, is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the amendment? I think we've almost exhausted. All right, then I will go back to Councillor Cornish. You happy? Oh, no, there's no summing up, isn't it? Right, okay, I'll put the amendment. Those in favour? Those against? Carried.
I think generally you invest in people, and when Sue spoke tonight, I don't think that she's the type of person to waste that money. I think that she's very focused on providing benefit to our community. I think she's a very motivated individual who is highly focused on delivering outcomes for our community. I would like to see it become sustainable going forward, as was discussed around the chamber, in terms of them standing on their own 2 feet as much as possible. I think that this will give them a boost to provide the programs going forward. And also, this is not an isolated, community section, as Councillor Turnbull pointed out, that we do provide this like a similar type of support to Dulwich Community Centre, for example. So I think that this is the right thing to do at this time. And as Councillor Hughes said, it will come into our draft budget and we can have a look holistically. We won't know what our draft budget will be, but essentially as we're going down that path to look at our entire budget, what will the outcome be, what will the rate increase be, then we'll have a better appreciation of what kind of bottom line we're looking at. So I think it's appropriate to at least put it forward into that at this stage. So I hope that you support the motion. I think it's the right thing to do at this time.
Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Well done. Now, we're moving down to 11:10, Councillor Dawes. Elected Members Allowance and Benefits Policy.
Yes, I have an amendment which I'm hoping Wendy will put up there for us. The amendment reads that we adopt the policy with the following amendments. That clause 6.5.5 meals and refreshments, we change it to a light meal prior to council, committee and council assessment panel meetings will be provided for elected members, will now become a light meal provided to committee and council assessment panel meetings.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, just for the benefit of the chamber, if I can get some clarification from our Governance Officer.
Through the Mayor, The advice is that if a motion is lost, the council has not made a decision. If you made, at the last meeting when it was lost, if you had made a decision that said council will continue, a subsequent decision that said council will continue to provide meals, it would be a rescission motion needed before council could consider this.
So as a point of clarification, I could move a motion indefinitely and put a motion on notice at every single council meeting that Councillor Davis is the best councillor, lose every single motion, but I could have it on every single agenda forever. Surely that can't be correct.
Well, we could put a motion that's...
Through the Mayor, that is correct.
Benny Davis the best councillor, and then you go. You have to stop doing it. That's what you do here.
Surely that's not in the spirit of the Act. Can you point out where in the Act that says?
Through the Chair, through the Mayor, on page 27 of the Council's Code of Practice, there's a clarification point that states that if a motion is lost and a decision has been made, which means you can continually bring the item up at every meeting if you wish to lodge a motion on notice that way. Until council makes a decision to the contrary. So in your example, council would have to move a motion that says Councillor Davis is not the best councillor ever.
A question?
Yes, I have a question because I have a recollection that at the meeting that Councillor Carbone wanted to move that we give money to people that have got big trees in their backyard, which was lost. At that same council meeting, there was something about trees later on, and he tried to put it in as an amendment, and you didn't allow it.
This time it's because it's in a policy, isn't it?
Through Madam Mayor, I have to abide by the governance advice in our new meeting procedures that we adopted.
But they're meeting procedures, is it the Act?
Is this our meeting procedures, or is this the local government procedures at meeting regulations, which covers all the holes if we don't move something alternative to it? Because I swear that there was, I can swear that there's a provision saying you can't bring materials in the same motion. So I remember the last council meeting we had problems where we were trying to move a motion, it got lost, and then we were trying to bring that an alternative was carried, and then we had to change it a little bit so that it was slightly different from the previous motion because you couldn't bring the same motion twice. And this is exactly the same motion that's already been lost by a
It's not a clarification, it's in green, it's our procedure.
Through Madam Mayor, if I can get some guidance.
Yeah.
Through the Mayor, this is our Code of Practice includes the meeting regulations, and that's in the black text. In the green text is City of Burnside's own procedures and clarifications, and this is the clarification we have added in based on the legal advice we received from Norman Waterhouse.
Mr. Cooper, you're nodding, so your staff member is reporting to us accurately and correctly in terms of, I'm not trying to doubt you, Wendy, at all. I just need for the council to hear from the General Manager that this is an appropriate action. Councillor Lemon?
Just another question. Can I just clarify that what's been said tonight, that what's been said tonight was because of legal advice that we got from Norman Waterhouse? Or about tonight, or was this at some past legal advice, or is this very recent legal advice about this matter?
Through you, Madam Mayor, my understanding it was legal advice we received at the time of the drafting and moving those rules. No, not specifically about this matter.
Can I ask about, in the Local Government Procedures at Meeting Regulations 2013, item 12.4, if a motion under Sub-Regulation 3 is lost, the motion of the same effect cannot be brought until after the expiration of 12 months or until after the next general election, whichever is sooner. And 3 says a motion the effect of which is carried would be to revoke or amend a resolution passed since the last general election of the council.
Through Madam Mayor.
I guess for me, just looking at it, this is actually not a motion, it's actually changing something that's within a policy, and the policy hasn't been accepted yet.
No, it's
I'm seeking governance advice.
Through the Mayor, I might respond to this one, if that's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Davis. So the regulation in 12.3 or 12.4 says if a motion under sub-regulation 3 is lost, a motion to the same effect cannot be brought until the expiration of 12 months or until the next general election. So it does refer to sub-regulation 3. Sub-regulation 3 says a motion the effect of which is carried would be to revoke or amend a resolution passed since the last general election. So what that regulation is saying is if council has a rescission motion and that is lost, that cannot be brought back to the chamber for the next 12 months. But what we're looking at here, or what we dealt with previously, the intent was the same, but it was not a rescission motion or a revocation.
I have one final crack, is that the motion referred to under motion 3, 12.3, is a resolution that we pass that this policy commence and be implemented. And so the motion last week was a motion to amend our policy, and the council resolved to implement our current policy. So the policy, the motion under 12.3, which is being amended, is the policy which is current now. And so that motion to amend our former motion to adopt this policy lost. And so 12.4 comes into effect because 3 is amending a former motion.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Through the Mayor, there's a slight technicality with that. So the previous motion, if it says that council rescind clause 6.1 or 6.5, it says a light meal will be provided, or rescinds the decision, or rescinds the policy itself, then that cannot be brought back. But because there was no rescission included in that last resolution, that's why this resolution is appropriate under the code.
But 3 says would revoke or amend. And so the former resolution is to adopt the meals, like the elected member allowance benefits policy. So we move that motion, council moved that motion. Now the former motion moved by Councillor Turnbull at the last meeting was to amend that motion. Essentially, it was to amend the policy that we've already adopted. So I say that that is what comes under 12.3, is the motion that we passed when we implemented the policy. So I think that Councillor Dawes can bring his motion in 12 months' time.
Ultimately, you have the opportunity to vote it down anyway, so, but I can only be guided by what our governance and our general managers are telling me. Okay. Yes, Councillor Lemon.
So if we follow all these arguments about this, we didn't actually act, the motion was lost last time. Does that mean if this motion gets lost tonight, it can come back at the next meeting?
Yep, apparently.
Through Madam Mayor, I think it's prudent if we just get clarification to Councillor Davis's point, and then we'll follow up with clarification to Councillor Lemon's point. If I can refer that to Karishma.
Thank you, Chris. Through the Mayor, I think we'll have to get probably further legal advice just to confirm what Councillor Davis was asking. However, just to answer Councillor Lemon's point, if Council decides to the contrary, then we do not have, this will not come back again for the next 12 months. So a decision needs to be made.
How is it different? It's the exact same.
Councillor Hughes, I think that's the point. That's the difference. That was That was the old policy that we voted on last time. This is a completely new policy, totally revised. No.
Current policies, we currently have policy elected members allowance and benefits policy. It's in standing now. And
Yes.
carries weight.
Yes, but this is a new policy that we're having to adopt tonight. No, this is a completely revised policy from the old one. Yeah. Well, there are not a great deal of changes, but it is a different one. So I think we need to move on. Councillor Dawes, can you continue?
So my 3 minutes hasn't started yet.
Sorry, Mr. Cooper.
So I just want to make sure I've got to amend that clause to a light mill prior to. And I haven't started yet, but I just want to say I did check this with administration before I've done it tonight, just so that everybody knows. All right. Now,
Can I actually lodge my as a point of order that this is a breach of these procedures under clause 12.4 of the local government, the meeting procedures?
Well, we have some debate on that, and I'm not going to rule on it for that reason. I've got my governance officer telling me one thing.
You can make a ruling, but I'd like to lodge a formal point of order in the minutes that you then need to make a ruling on to overturn my point of order.
I'll leave it with you. What did we do? Okay. All right. I'm going to continue. I take your point of order, but I'm going to we're going to continue with this debate now, and I've got an undertaking from the CEO that he will get clarification and get back to us for future meetings.
That's right. Through Madam Mayor, I think I have a circuit breaker on this one because I'm now not clear in my mind what is correct and not correct here. This particular policy is not contingent on the Ombudsman's deadline. The others are. They're on the agenda this evening. So I'm more than comfortable if Council wishes to defer consideration until they receive advice on the matter.
The administration advice is that there's no problem. Like either the administration needs to make a decision, and so I would like to raise a point of order that we do not have, that this motion should not be applied. And so I'd like to record in the minutes and have a point of order that we're breaching the local government procedures meeting regulation 2013. And then I'd like the mayor to make a ruling on that in line with the officer's recommendation and then proceed.
I'm very reluctant to make a ruling and then be told that I was wrong to make the ruling when I'm acting on the basis of the governance advice I'm being given.
Through Madam Mayor, my recommendation is that this report be pulled or deferred for further consideration at a future meeting. But that's my recommendation to you, given the uncertainty.
From the fact that Councillor Davis wants to make a formal point of order, which I must rule on.
Yes.
All right, I will get the point of order noted, but we will proceed on the basis of the advice that have been given by a governance officer and general manager tonight and the CEO. Then we will move on and act accordingly to this motion. I don't think you need to tell our governance officer what she has to do.
I'll certainly record your intent, Councillor Davis.
Councillor Dawes, do we start again at this point? I think it would be fairest to start again with a timer.
Yeah, I do regard this as a very serious issue, so can you please just pay attention? As you are aware, I had to leave the last council meeting 15 minutes prior to its end. I watched the YouTube version of those 15 minutes the next day. As you can guess, I was extremely disappointed that a council discussion on the motion of notice proposed by Councillor Turnbull along the lines of this amendment.
It's not relevant to the motion. No, him being disappointed with council is not relevant to this clause being enacted.
It's explaining why.
No, it doesn't matter why. It is
Point of order.
hang on.
Interruption.
Can you move a little faster in and skip what may not be necessary?
I think it is necessary because we could not have discussion on this item because someone put a question be put. The 2 years I've been on this council, that has only been used when there's been a long discussion on an agenda item. And the reason for putting forward this policy amendment is I'd like to hear what other person's views are. I believe providing meals is not a right, it's not a privilege, it is not an entitlement. We receive a generous allowance of around $18,000 per year, which is meant to cover such expenses as mobile phone, travel expenses on council business within Burnside, coffees for meetings with staff and residents. We also receive a car park permit. We have use of elected members' room for meetings, use of landline, computer, printer, photocopier, get a laptop, ongoing IT support, and also an online subscription to Adelaide Now. So in light of the Ombudsman report on Burnside credit card expenses, I believe that providing a meal for a meeting starting at 7 p.m. is not necessarily a good spend of ratepayers' money. We could start later at 7:30 if we wish. Now, does providing meals pass the pub test? Does it pass the front page test? Most residents would say no, and we yet didn't have a discussion on that. I'm pleased to report that this council has put in place many actions to tighten up credit card expenditures, with more to come tonight. This council has a keen eye on reducing expenditure wherever we can, but to me it's the principle of doing the right thing by the community in regard to councillor meals that is at stake here tonight. In COVID times, only 7 elected members can safely have a meal in the elected member room. Pre-COVID, more than 8 did eat, although there was a complaint about the standard of the meals received. So once again, it's not a right, it's not a privilege, it's not an entitlement. So that's the point I want to make tonight. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Turnbull?
I'll second the motion because I had this similar motion last council meeting, but it was blocked. I actually found this to be quite unfair because people did not express an opinion. I don't know what you're frightened of about a meal, for heaven's sake. I won't repeat what I said at the last council meeting, but endorse what Councillor Dawes has said. We need to shed the embarrassing record of excess at the expense of the ratepayers. The cost of the meals is minor, but there'll always be a perception that EMs are indulging. I endorse the comments about allowances. Surely you can pay for a meal out of that. And please don't make statements about shaving off money and help save money, finding savings if you're not prepared to do so. I'd really like to show the public that we are a responsible group of people. We're not entitled, we're not rorting the system. And in summary, I just think it's pretty off, the whole thing. Well, we can't change what's happened, but we can change what will happen in the future. We can actually set an example. We're quite adult, we can look after our own food, surely. And we don't have to ask the council. And I do remember the story about the tea bags, the lady who was using the tea bags twice, 3 times. We've heard that story before, we've heard it again. And I know of people who live in the Burnside area who are so disgusted. They are on limited money, can't afford much. They hear about this, they call it rorting. from the elected members and everybody else, and they perceive that we have our snouts in the trough, to be quite honest. So let's get out of that perception. Thank you.
It appears no one wishes to speak. No one? All right, then. All right,
I'm going to
Councillor
ask a question. If Councillor Dawes and Turnbull feel so strongly about this, I'd like to address in closing why a meal will be provided to committee and council assessment panel meetings for elected members. If your rationale is that we get an allowance, it should be all or nothing as far as I'm concerned. So I'd like you to address that in closing.
Right, so there's no one else who wishes to speak?
Can I clarify the motion?
Yes?
It says adopt the policy.
That's the general policy, the whole,
With amendments as tabled. I don't know what that means. But then amend clause 5.5, meals and refreshments, at 551 to read, a light meal prior to committee and council assessment panel meetings will be provided for elected members and independent members. Isn't that what this says already?
No, it's not before council. So it's if you want to
Ah.
run a committee.
Oh.
So Councillor Dawes on DAP will still get a meal.
Thank you.
If he chooses to. Same applies to all committee meetings, if you choose to. Yeah, okay, back to Councillor Dawes. We've had a lot of dilly-dallying, and so to tell me to move on is a bit of a joke.
I made the point, thank you for the question, Councillor Hughes, I do appreciate it. I'm disappointed that no one else can speak tonight about it, about the other side, but so be it. The reason why, because those meetings start at 6 p.m. and these start at 7, it could start at 7:30. So, and they go until, I think the Audit Committee went to 9:30 the other night and so forth. So, and of course they also include independent members. So that's a little bit different from just council members here. So that's the reason. I'd like to foreshadow, which I can't see this getting
Don't interrupt. You had your opportunity to speak. You chose not to. So let Councillor Dawes finish.
I'd like to foreshadow that to help some of the councillors get here and have a meal beforehand, that we start at 7:30, and I believe we used to start council meetings at 7:30. So that could easily be done, and I think the ratepayers would actually appreciate the fact that we're starting later so we could have a meal prior. So I'm disappointed you haven't given me the other side of the story, but I'm very, very much in favour of trying to reduce our expenditure as much as we can as elected members. Thank you.
Thank you. Those in favour? Those against? Division. Carried. Division's been called, so those who...
It's lost, actually.
Sorry. Lost. No, it's lost. Now, we will need to move another motion though, because we've also... Yeah, I appreciate that. I understand.
I'll move the officer's recommendation after.
Okay, that's all I'm trying to clarify, Councillor Davis, all right, before we move on to anything else. All right, so now the division has been called. Those who are in favour, please stand. So, Councillor Turnbull, Councillor Dawes.
We're four.
Yeah, you're the four.
I didn't think you could do a division on amendment.
No, it's not. And those remaining are Councillor Jones, Hubel, Cornish, Hughes, Davey, Piggott, Davis and Lemon. You got them all? Okay. Thank you. Now, Councillor Davis, you're willing to move the officer's recommendation? And the reason that there was amendments there is because there have been amendments to the policy prior to, sorry. Yeah, sorry. There's an alternate motion, apologies. Okay, so you're moving the alternate motion? just got to find the right page. Page 241. I need to first of all find out if Councillor Davis wants to speak. Do you wish to speak to this motion at all? No? Councillor Davey, you wish to second it? Right, is there anyone who wishes to speak? Yes, Councillor Piggott.
Can I just clean it up a bit? I think the word amendments is actually not appropriate there, I don't think. I think we are adopting the policy put in front of us as tabled. No, the policy as tabled. That's what we're doing, isn't it?
I delete as tabled.
Okay, that's also fair. I think that was just messing things up a bit, but tell me if I'm wrong.
There is one, and technically there is one amendment on the sheet we were given tonight, and so therefore it does have to include the amendment.
Can we have a clarification then, please, from the CEO of what's changed?
Yes, certainly. Through Madam Mayor, I'll seek that clarification from Karishma.
It's a little like Councillor Piggott, we made a slight amendment to the CEO, to the recommendations on the CEO, and we just had to add with the amendment.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, the sheets, a few sheets have been placed on your table before you, and that summarises all the feedback received yesterday from elected members, and just has some really minor changes. So for the elected member allowances and benefits policy, it is just a minor change, swapping the word uniform with equal in one of the clauses on page 244. The summary sheet there has all the policies listed. As we get to the other policies, I'm happy to explain the changes as well.
It was just for consistency within the policy. So technically we have to include the word amendment, even though it's very minor. Yes, Councillor Lemon?
So I have a question. This policy is not due for review till January 2023. So this is not going to come back to council till January 2023, or can it come back at the next meeting with a variation?
Because this is an amendment now, so you have to rescind this amendment.
No, this is a totally new policy that we are accepting tonight.
Are we actually doing something, or did something get lost?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we have a policy. You have a policy before you for adoption, and we are asking that you amend a very minor amendment as per the page that's in front of you. So that's for council to adopt, should they wish to.
And it would not be reviewed until 2023.
But can it come back to us again? Can the very issue come back to us again?
So, through you, Madam Mayor, should council wish to review this policy earlier than the cited date, they can do so if they so choose.
So it can come back to us again?
But you would have to move, but you would have to bring the entire document as a motion to council to review it again.
Nothing will stop it from coming back to the next council meeting, is what I'm asking.
If an elected member wishes it to come back for review, yes, it can come back for review.
At the next council meeting?
Should they choose to.
My point is they have to rescind this motion. Because there's a 12-month buffer from amending.
We've now made a decision to adopt this
Yeah.
policy as it stands, so if you want to change something.
Because the amendment previously lost.
Yeah.
Let's leave it up.
Look, let's get this policy through. We have a policy then, and then worry about what happens after that. But technically, according to the policy we're passing tonight, if we assuming we do, it does not get amended until 2000 and I haven't got it in front of me. 23. All right.
No, it doesn't get revised again until 2023.
That's right. It's not revised until 2023, unless, of course, anyone could bring forward a policy and ask for it to be reviewed earlier than the deadline that is set on the.
I think we're talking about cost purposes here.
No, I'm not. I don't think I am. But okay. So we have the policy with a slight amendment. I had a mover. I had a seconder. Councillor Piggott asked a question. Councillor Jones, you wish to ask something or make a comment?
Well, this is more a comment, I think. It defies belief, defies common sense that voting against a motion is not a decision. And I'm tempted to move a motion at the end of this meeting, if we've got time, to change the meeting procedures, to say that a no vote is a decision. It's just craziness. And that's my speech. So, and I'm voting in favour of the motion.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I actually agree with your sentiment, and as such, that's why I've undertaken to seek clarification to assure Council of the appropriate way to deal with it in future.
I would never tell you not to move a motion, but we have a guarantee from the CEO that it will be investigated, and we will get a report back to let us know what the situation is legally in relation to the Act. Right. Up until then, we have operated only with the knowledge that we have, the advice we've had from our governance officer, our general manager, and legal information based on a prior situation. Councillor Piggott.
I'd like to speak in favour of the motion. The policy was, I do note, a small change on 6.4.1, which doesn't seem to be particularly material, but this policy went through a fairly strong review from both administration in the first place and then the audit committee, and I commend it to you. I think we should get on with it and put it into law.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Otherwise, I'll go back to Councillor Davis. Right, I shall put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Carried. And a division has been called. So all those in favour, please stand. Councillor Cornish, Hughes, Davey, Piggott, Davis, Lemon, Jones and Hubel. Against? Councillors Turnbull and Dawes. Thank you. Now moving to credit card policy. Councillor Piggott.
Yeah, look, I pulled this actually because having done quite a bit of work on it with the audit committee, I thought that's what was going to hit here. It's almost what hit here. There's a couple of amendments. I don't like this as a practice, I have to say. But looking at it quickly, I don't think it kills the process.
Can I just interrupt? Remember, during the audit committee, not everything was written down at the time. It got a little bit confusing. So this was as a result of some of the things that were omitted on the night because they didn't get it all recorded on the night.
Right.
So my apologies, but I think there's a, if you remember rightly, there were a lot of people.
I do remember. I still don't like this practice.
Yeah. Enough for your comment.
I may have contributed to it, but I don't like it. Having said that, I don't think it flaws the point where we should hold this up. And I really pulled it because credit cards obviously have been a major point of consternation in recent times. And the amount of work that went into this policy to make sure it did cover off anything that the Ombudsman raised and much, much more was quite extensive. It is quite an onerous policy, a very onerous policy, actually, in regard to credit cards. So to achieve the absolute lockdown of credit cards as an issue, I feel it will definitely do that. As a credit card as a business tool, which is pretty widespread, and an effective one and one that can be managed, it'll be less useful, but this is where we need to be. We need to be on the absolute tough side in regard to credit cards, and that's what this policy does. So I feel we should pass this motion. Thanks.
I seek a seconder. Councillor Dawes, do you wish to speak? You don't wish to speak at all then? No, no one else is speaking. Okay. All right, then I will go back to Councillor Piggott. I move the motion, put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. and for all of the work that's gone into it. I just point out that the page Appendix 1, the procurement thresholds matrix, was missing from the agenda, and hence that's why that's published. It's not an amended version, it's just was missing. Okay, next one is Councillor Davey.
Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Can I move that we have a 15-minute break?
Yes, I'm happy.
Could we just finish this one? Yeah.
Okay. So my amended motion is that Council adopt the revised procurement policy with the amendments as tabled. So that's one. Oh, why doesn't she just cut and paste? Did you get my motion that I sent you, that you could cut and paste? I sent it so she can cut and paste. Oh, sorry. So my motion is, thank you, Wendy, that Council adopt the revised procurement policy with amendments as tabled. 2, at 6.1.9. So at 6.1.9, Wendy, at 6.1.9, environmental sustainability, Council supports the state government introduction of the ban on single-use plastics, and at 7, delete review and authority. Thank you. So the reason for this is, this is another very key policy which has undergone review and revision in light of the Ombudsman's findings, and it's been given comprehensive consideration by elected members and the Audit Committee. The procurement policy is a very important document and blueprint for good governance and prudential management. I believe the City of Burnside needs to state up front that we support the state government in its ban on single-use plastics, which takes effect next week, and then with stage 2 effective in March. So this is just to ensure that as we procure all goods here, that we don't procure any single-use plastics in line with government policy. And then with stage 2 of that ban, which is effective from March 2022. This statement is really there as a commitment to our policy that we are leaders in this respect and are following this diktat from the state government, and it also gives guidance and a reference point for staff when they're including, when they're managing procurement. In relation to point 7, which is on page 443, oh, beg your pardon, 449, thank you. This is a new addition, and it's a review and authority. I think we give great latitude and scope to the staff at 6.1.10 in the policy, which is procurement procurement governance principles. So these principles give great latitude and scope to the staff for purchasing practices with a commitment that we don't in our purchasing policy, and they provide guidance and a whole blueprint for the administration. I don't believe that it's appropriate at this stage that we have a waiver where the CEO may waive or vary requirements of this policy as needed to meet operational requirements, and that any deviations in this regard will be provided through the CEO's monthly report to Council. I don't think this is appropriate. I think with all that the guidance that and leeway and everything that's been given in the policy, I think any need for this needs to be brought to Council before, not after the fact. So I think in terms of purchasing and procurement, well, it's procurement, so it's big ticket stuff. I think we've got enough leeway in the principles of procurement to allow this. So they're my small amendments to this policy. Thank you.
I just point out that this is a policy, not a protocol, and there is a difference between the two. Councillor Lemon, you have a question.
I have a question particularly about item 7. Now, this is a policy. What bothers me about item 7 and what we've just heard, this actually allows the CEO to act incredibly quickly. So my reading of this is, if we had a storm event, like we did several years ago, the power goes off in Burnside and you need to procure a front-end loader, you're not going to go through this process. You're just going to get the first one you can get. And that's what number 7 actually does in this policy. Because my thing is, without changing the intent. So no, this is my question. So does this disadvantage you? Does this disadvantage you? That's what I'm asking.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe it does disadvantage me, and I'll context that response by that as the CEO, I will always be doing everything in my power to adhere to the policy as adopted. That is how I will operate and how any CEO should operate. But if you remove clause 7, my hands are tied, and we could be coming back for very minor matters or very major matters, which could impact, again, minor to our community or a major impact on our community. I think I would rather that it stayed in, because I think it gives me ability to look after Council's interests in a timely fashion, should that be needed. But my understanding is that I'll be implementing this policy without change if I'm able.
That waiver, as it's been called, review and authority exists at the end as number 7 in all of these policies. So my question is, why would you remove one if you were not going to remove all of them? And you've just passed the credit card policy, which includes that exact same, virtually that exact same statement. All right, is there anyone who wishes to speak on this? Sorry. I need a seconder. Yes, need a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Lemon. Is there a seconder? Then there's no seconder, then the motion lapses.
Happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Cornish. You're seconding it, Councillor Lemon?
And I'd just like to speak for a moment.
Yes.
I'm really pleased on page 443 to look at the environmental sustainability part of procurement processes. I actually think that is fantastic. I think that the amended motion we've just not voted for, well, that was lost through lack of a seconder, putting in single-use plastics made no difference, because that's actually going to become law and we would be fined if we didn't do that. So we are complying with all state government legislation as of the 1st of March. So I'm really pleased with this policy. I think it's an excellent policy for procurement, and well done, everyone.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Davey?
Thank you, Worship. I acknowledge the changes that are made and the work that's gone into this. I still think the environmental issues could be beefed up a bit, but people don't accept that, so that's fine. In terms of 7, review and authority, I'll articulate my concerns, and while I have no reason to not trust the CEO and the administration, in terms of prudential management and good governance, if we had a crooked CEO, this could be, this could allow spending on a grand scale with no accountability until after the fact. Or it could, I'll take that back. It could allow inappropriate spending with us being informed after the fact. That's how I read this. And so that's my reason and my concern about it. I didn't have that concern. I noted it in the other policies that have been revised. But in terms of procurement, it is the big area, as we all know, for corruption in government. The opportunities are there, and I think council should be, notwithstanding the clarification about an emergency event, I think clarification should be provided to council to authorise that expenditure. So that's my concern about that clause 7. I recognise that this is a policy and that there will be protocols underneath it, and there's a whole raft of them, quite necessarily so. It's a very complex area and it's a very important area. Those are my concerns for the inclusion of 7.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? If not, I'll put it back to Councillor Cornish. Put the motion. All right, those in favour? Those against? Carried. Move that we have a 10-minute break. Right, Councillor Davey, Councillor Turnbull, all those in favour? Good, we will start again at 8 past. 1, 2, 3. Right, I have a quorum, so we need to start. 11.1 we go back to, and that is Councillor Davey, page 15.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll move in accordance with the recommendation that Council receive and note the January 2021 Chief Executive Officer report. And I just had a couple of questions, if I may, to the CEO. One of them relates to the para 38, the Regal Theatre Master Plan. Sorry, page 20. Paragraph 38. And we're developing the draft master plan, and we had some focus groups scheduled for before Christmas, which needed to be deferred because of COVID. Elected members have received an invitation, but the members of the public haven't yet been notified. So I just wondered what was happening in relation to that.
Through Madam Mayor, if I can refer that to Ms Taylor.
Through the Mayor, we'll certainly be sending those invitations out probably next week, and they'll be focusing towards the people that made their first submissions and asking them to come back.
So follow-up question, is this the people who were booked into the focus groups before Christmas?
Through the Mayor, yes.
Thank you. It's just they're getting a bit anxious about their invitations. The other question relates to the Parkway Bluestone curbing, and it's not in this report. I understand the work's already commenced on that heritage listed project, or that project on our heritage infrastructure, and I just wondered if you could give us an update about progress and how it's going, please, and when it will be completed.
Through Madam Mayor, Ms Taylor.
Through the Mayor, Councillor Davey, I might have to get back to you on that one if you don't mind, and I'll send you through an update out of session.
Seconded by Councillor Cornish. Does anyone else wish to debate or ask a question? Right, then I shall put the motion. All those in favour need to be sitting down to vote. Right, thank you. All those in favour and those against, carried. Davis. It is page 60, yes.
All right. Happy for me to start? Yeah. Largely Penfold Park is an excellent, quiet park used by, a good amount of the community. It's not the hustle and bustle of Kensington Gardens Reserve or, the destination that is Hazelwood Park, but it's still a very important park and facility for our community as a whole. Councillor Piggott and I have had a number of discussions with our community, and particularly regarding different facilities there and the potential uses for it. We've also had a number of consultations as we go along. I think that it's very prudent of this council to develop asset management plans or master plans for all of its assets, whether it even be the newly constructed Conningham Street Depot or larger facilities such as the Kensington Gardens Master Plan. And I think what that does over time is prevent situations where we have assets which kind of run into a wall and then we have no long-term vision about how they're going to be used, and it's not a constant re-evaluation of it. So the Penfold Park Draft Master Plan does exactly that, and I'll be moving the officer's recommendation. I'd like to specifically talk about the costs in there, and I think this council is obviously very aware of costs going forward and the impact that it can have on our ratepayers. And what I would suggest to you is that you support the motion as it is, and that's to go to put the master plan in the timeline that it's set out into the draft budget. Is to go to proceed to community consultation. And the actual time frame of that can be decided later. But I think that going into the draft budget this year and understanding what the pressures are, and this doesn't put it in there, let me make that clear, but is essentially to start to consider this as an item, as a long-term commitment for the City of Burnside Council, which it should be. Now, largely Penfold Park hasn't, had much support in terms of planning and future-proofing and catering for changes in future use, and we've seen little bits change from time to time, such as the toilet facility where it was upgraded in the past to fix a specific issue. So I think that generally all of our assets should proceed along a master planning process to give clarity to the council in terms of our long-term financial plan, and also clarity to our residents in terms of what they should expect in a particular park. So I'd recommend that this go to proceed to community consultation, and I'd ask that, I'm obviously cognizant of the budget impositions, but that's, and I think that this budget will be different from every other in that we will be looking carefully at what the officer's recommendation is in terms of a rate rise and the timing of our different projects as we go forward. And I'd be suggesting that in terms of the priorities that are listed in there and the order in which that they're done could be shifted around. So rather than having the playground at the beginning, it could be pushed into a later year. So I hope that you support it.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Davey? Do you wish to speak now or hold off till later? Councillor Hughes?
I'd like to propose an amendment. I have sent it through to Wendy. So essentially that council will endorse the draft Penfold Park master plan for the purpose of proceeding to consultation with the following modifications. Remove reference to the years for replacement on pages 19 to 23 and make reference in the document that items would be replaced in line with the asset management plan or when budget is allocated through the annual budget process. Point 2, that with regards to the priorities listed on the above pages, rate the item as phase 1 to 5, with phase 1 being the highest priority for replacement. And finally, prioritise seating and lighting upgrade within the next 2 years to reflect the community response. I think just to give, I guess, a bit of reasoning for that, when I read the community feedback, it read to me that in general, people were happy with the park. There are a lot of good facilities that are already there, and I think it's great to have this overarching vision of how we want to see this park with a long-term view of its use. I certainly think that there's an opportunity to have one of these nature play spaces, and I think Unley has a really good example of that in their Haywood Park. I certainly see value in doing that. But when I was reading through it, the community actually rated every single asset that was sent out, except for the lighting and seating, as good. No, they didn't think it was probably great, but it's actually in reasonable condition. And I think we have spoken about thinking wisely about how we prioritise and spend council funds. So I think point 1, I'm really just trying to say that I understand there is an asset management plan. There are budgets that will be allocated to replace some of those assets, and there's also a budget bit around the new playground. So I think those items should be incorporated. But then I think it's really just giving the community an understanding that there's potentially a scale of things that need to be done, and they will be done over time as budget can be allocated. So I think this is really just about going and getting that feedback, but also setting an expectation that we will do some work, but we won't go out and spend $1 million as was in the document. Yeah, sorry. So I think there's some quick wins that we can do there to incorporate the community feedback, and I hope someone will potentially support my amendment.
Right, do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Lemon, you wish to speak now or later? No. Anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Councillor Cornish?
Crap on the amendment. Can I hold off till we go back into,
Councillor Dawes, you wish to speak now?
No, I don't have a question. The question mine is replacement on pages 19 to 23. Can you just help me? Is that Appendix B?
Page 126 of the report. Yeah. So it's referencing the master plan pages next to the pages of the agenda.
We need to probably put that in there then.
Sorry, it was
Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Councillor Davey.
I have a question, thanks. I just need some clarification because I couldn't read the motion as it was, the amended motion as it was coming up. Is this changing the intent that phase 1 to 5 change medium high?
No, not the priority, it's just that, like, it doesn't specify timing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it takes out the years, so it doesn't commit it to a time.
So you keep it as medium high priority, but don't specify when the replacement will happen because it just be as part of the budget.
So just remove that year. Thank you.
This provides a bit more flexibility. Okay, does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Turnbull.
I just want to say, I think it's a terrific report. It's beautiful. It's got coloured pictures. It's easy to read. It's all done, so it's easy. When it's Belliet Reserve's turn, I hope we get just as good. That's all I want to say.
I'm sure you will.
Councillor Davey.
Sorry.
Councillor Turnbull, if you can turn your microphone.
Oh, yep.
Thank you. I know I've got a bit, I pressed too soon, I'm sorry. I want to endorse those comments too. I just want to say it is a fantastic report. It's a fantastic master plan draft, and it's very interesting to see the value the communities place on their trees, open space, just the value they put on the whole park and the wildlife in the park, and how keen they are that we foster that and replace it, as well as the nature play areas and just the whole structure of it. So well done, it's fantastic.
Is there anyone else? Councillor Davis? Sorry, Councillor Dawes.
Yeah, I was pleased with the report, and we're having one on Belliet Reserve next year, I think it is it this? And what I found there is, I've been to, I think, one meeting we had at Penfold Park, and the residents love Penfold Park. There's no question of that. And I wasn't surprised to see that most like it as it currently is, with some small changes here and there. And I was very pleased to see that. I think the main concern was the toilets, I think, which Councillor Davis was really strong about, and that's been all improved. But yeah, I do like what Councillor Hughes has put forward there, because I don't want to give the impression to the community it's going to happen in 23, 24, or whatever. So taking the years out, I think, is the right way to go. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? To the amendment, sorry. No? Then I will put the amendment. What?
To the amendment, because I seconded it.
Ah, sorry.
Yes, I reserve my right, and I have to speak now, don't I?
Yes.
So I read this report, a very easy report to read, I'm pleased to say, and I too saw that the community really loves the park like it is and doesn't want it to change. But by the same token, they want more rubbish bins and they want some upgrades and they want more seating. And I think what this amendment gives us is those priorities to put them in the first instance so that stuff happens without the whole thing being done in one hit. So I actually think this is a really good amendment. We've got a master plan. We'll be working to the master plan over a period of time, and this will give the people what they've asked for straight up, and the other stuff will come in the fullness of, and the park will not change massively in one go. So I think this is excellent.
Can I just make a comment here now? And it's something that has concerned me for a while in terms of when we're looking at all of these park upgrades. We have a hugely increasing population of Asian people coming into our community. And been to Beijing a couple of times, and they play table tennis in the middle of the freeway. Table tennis, outdoor table tennis, is so popular. In a school that I worked in New Zealand, they also had outdoor table tennis tables, made of concrete, that were really popular with the students. I would really like us to be a little more proactive in terms of putting forward some different suggestions. There's a really good one in Felixstowe Reserve, where that Kensington Nord, Payneham St Peters have put in. And so I'd really like us to think about our changing community, because we tend to just get the same old as put forward by the, whoever the people are who do our consultations for us. And Chinese community are not particularly great in coming forward and telling us what they exactly want. But I know that where they have been placed in the past in other countries as well, they are incredibly successful. And I believe they're much better made nowadays as well. But they can double as picnic tables. Kids play with a tennis ball. I mean, they are really quite amazing outdoor facilities. And I just would like consideration in the future when we look at upgrades of parks, that we actually think outside the square and think of things that might not have been considered before, but taking into consideration our changing population, changing cultural population. Now I will put the amendment. Those in favour of the amendment? Thank you. Carried? No, against? No. So now the amendment becomes a motion. So I'll now I go back to Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Worship. It wasn't the appropriate time. Before we send this out, can we just have someone go through the map and the key? Because I noticed that items number 22 and 23 are kind of flipped, the rotundas and the park benches. So if you could just revisit that, that would be great, especially since we've actually lost the listing now from that document. I think you'll be relying more on that map of where things are going. So that'd be great.
Right, I shall put the motion. All those in favour? Sorry? I'm sorry. It has to go back to Councillor Davis.
Yeah. You cut my 5 minutes. Yeah, you cut my 5 minutes down to 3 minutes. This is me speaking the motion. Cut my 5 minutes down to 3 minutes. I've got to make use of my full 6 now.
Laughing is being timed.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. As long as I've got the mic. No, I'd like to thank Councillor Hughes for the motion. I think that's quite right. We don't want to commit ourselves to a timeline on it, and I think that reshuffling it in terms of what we could do urgently and to give the best bang for the buck should come first. I think that the playground addition, the playground for me is something that's quite important, and also incorporating more nature play into Penfold Park is something that I think that children and families can definitely benefit from going forward, as the playground is quite old. And I think there is definitely a move across the city of Burnside, well, across Australia, to move away from those old style school playgrounds that most of us would have grown up with the platforms and the metal, and then start to incorporate more natural products in that. And I think that has an impact on our psyche as a whole in society. So I'd like to thank people for their debate, and especially Councillor Hughes' amendment. I wish I had thought of it first, but yes, well done. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. The next one.
I would like to move the officer's recommendation that we go to community consultation on the draft master plan for Trigens Oval. And I think the key here is we've gone out to the community, we've asked for their ideas about what we can do with Trigens Oval. They've come back to us. The administration have come up with a vision for how to put people's suggestions into reality, and now we'll go out to them again like we did with Laurel Avenue and say, what do you think? And this report is so great that we've already had community response. We've had a lady from Mount Osmond has suggested table tennis tables are required at Trigens Oval. Certainly there's been a lot of koala lovers have been lobbying already about the Melaleuca trees that the arborists say are dead, and they disagree. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to go out and see what people think, perhaps for the for the arborists to have a second thought about it, I don't think we need to change the plan. I think we can still discuss the plan as it is, because once we've got everyone's feedback, we can come up with a final plan that is right. So I hope you will support this motion.
Councillor Hubel, assuming you're second.
Yes, I'd like to second, but I'll withhold my speaking at this time.
Councillor Davis.
Can I move Sarah's motion? As an amendment? I can try.
As a variation or as an amendment?
As an amendment.
Amendment. Okay, it's completely different.
I think this is adding in stuff. It's not like.
So you wish to add items
just
2 and 3?
Just 2, really? Yeah, just 2.
Just 2.
I'm just removing the priority timeline. Maybe Sarah can just move it. She knows what she's talking about. Can you? You take it.
So you want to say that council 1 endorse and 2 rate?
Yeah. No, but see, Councillor Hughes' point, I think, is it commits us to this spending and this time frame as well, whereas we may not necessarily want to be committed to that time frame as yet, because we haven't had that draft budgeting process. So we're not sure where we sit. But it's definitely in.
Who's making this amendment?
Councillor Hughes.
I think it should be, part 2 is replace, in the priority column on pages 19, 20 and 21, replace the year with phase 1 to however many years, what's that, is it 1, 2, 3, 4, with, 1 to 5, with phase 1, I think that's what we want it to say. So we're just, instead of committing to the years, we're saying this is priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I don't know if we need to make reference to the asset management plan.
Word replacement, because in this case we're actually creating mainly new, aren't we?
For installation or, yeah, installation or replace, installation or upgrade, yeah.
And speaking to my motion.
Can I just clarify though with staff, because I think on that previous one around the asset management plan, we'd included that to cover off things that were in the bid budget, the budget bids.
Through Madam Mayor, no, very comfortable with this proposal.
All right, I'm happy to leave that as is, same rationale applies.
I need a seconder for the amendment. Councillor Cornish, you're seconding it? All right, thank you. Question, Councillor Dave?
Thank you. Could I query, in terms of consultation, the second round, because the first round was all the community, wasn't it? How extensive is the second round of consultation going to be? Because we're talking about in relation to the opportunity to provide feedback on the issue that was raised tonight, which is the preservation of the Melaleucas.
Through Madam Mayor, if I can refer that to Ms Taylor.
Through the Mayor, consultation process will be done online, but also in hard copy through local residents to be able to contribute, social media, engage Burnside, that kind of thing.
So will we get back to everybody who made comments before? Is that the intention?
Through the Mayor, yes, we will.
No, I've got a question from Councillor Davis first. No, that's right, got to go back. Then I'll come back to you, councillor Davey.
Yes, I just want to say that because we're going out to a consultation and we haven't decided when we're going to do this, we shouldn't have the dates in there because we don't want to induce in the community an expectation of timeframes. So I think in terms of the timeframes, we still need to come back and have that discussion when the consultation report comes back, because we should make that decision, and they might disagree on the priorities, for example, and they can give us that feedback. But in terms of that, we will need to have a discussion on those timeframes when it comes back here after the consultation report is finished. Yeah.
I think that would be anticipated anyway, wouldn't it? Yep. Now, councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, my concern is when we look at page 205 of the report, and it's the issue that was raised tonight in question and has been raised by other locals, is whether or not we can rejuvenate the Melaleuca plantings. And you can see a picture of them on page 205. It's actually the ones at the northern end of the reserve, which have been there for a very long time. Sadly, I think they've been a bit neglected by council's parks and gardens, and they haven't been pruned, so they've become quite leggy. But they continue to be a vital habitat. And I'm wondering, is it possible for us to rejuvenate them and do some landscaping and additional planting around them when the work is done?
Through Madam Mayor. I'll work with our arborist, and if that's possible, that will be the action. However, at the end of the day, I do need to take the advice of my arborists, which will tell me whether they are at the end of their useful life. But the commitment is, if that is possible, we'll do it.
Councillor Piggott.
I reckon they look more than leggy. They look stuffed to me. I'm not an arborist, but they don't look too healthy. That wasn't what I was going to say. Let's see what the CEO comes up with. I've got a question in that, is it fair to say this master plan doesn't actually address the issue of parking around rugby? Or if it does, how does it?
Through Madam Mayor, if I can refer that question.
Through the Mayor, if you, in the draft management plan at the moment, there will be additional parking completed with the Maid Road.
Was there any work done on whether I noticed some, oh yeah.
But I haven't got any, now I have got someone up, otherwise I was going to let you. Okay, councillor Turnbull. No, it actually goes back to councillor Davey. Did you have another question? No, okay, so councillor Turnbull, and then it'll come back to councillor Piggott.
Through the bit, we use this term arborist all the time. I'd like to know who they are. Are they council arborists, or are they independent arborists, or a mixture of both? So the term is used quite loosely, arborist. Do they have qualifications, etc.?
Through Madam Mayor, I'll refer that to Ms Taylor.
Through the Mayor, yes, the arborists are highly qualified. It's a specific, qualification that they have, and they're highly sought after, and we highly value ours.
And if I may, Madam Mayor, our modus operandi is to save every tree we can save. If it can be saved, it will be saved. We only talk about removal when there is not in doubt and no other option.
Okay, councillor Piggott, your question, then it's councillor Dawes.
Yeah, I note in the responses there was a suggestion around taking action on Tamarack Avenue in regard to one way to allow more parking. Was there any consideration? And we did talk about Tamarack Avenue before, because it is also available to us to pull back as a road. Was there any work done on perhaps something we could do there that would help that situation?
Through the Mayor, may I suggest that we bring that back through the consultation process? I think the original consultation process we undertook, interest in that wasn't high, but we can certainly revisit it through this second community engagement.
You're absolutely right about the issue of actually travelling down that street when the rugby is on, because they are parked on both sides of the road. Fortunately, it's on a Saturday and there's no east-west trucks coming through. But it is something that needs to be looked at in terms of, and I'm very interested to see what the additional car parking numbers would be with what is proposed anyway, because there's no doubt that on a day when, particularly when two Burnside teams are playing against each other, that the crowds in the car parking is enormous, and Tamarack is a very good access road through. And remember, I don't know whether you remember, one of the issues from the Regis was that's where their emergency access is, and so it's really important that that road is kept open in some way. But the idea of a one-way isn't something, as we've been told, would be looked at in the future. It's also where the back end section is also where their high dependency dementia unit is as well. So, okay, now we need to go to Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Yes, I noted Councillor Davies' comments. That's the north-western corner, was it? Oh, yeah, northeast corner. It's referred to in paragraph 31, and it says there, unfortunately, that a number of trees have zero lifespan, so I don't know if that's the Melaleucas, Councillor Davey, but that is a very, very poor area. I think the Mayor and I looked over that after a rugby game, and that does need significant change. The comment I was going to make as well concerns paragraph 23, and I hope that Councillor Hubel and Councillor Jones would just note that there are so many ideas for that north-western corner, or the triangle. So it's going to be hard for us to decide which one is the best. So I'm hoping that they can get very close to the residents and help us with which is the most preferred option. Thank you.
Councillor Piggott.
If I could speak to the motion, I'm actually not going to vote for this because I think the traffic issue is a major issue, and I think it's silent on it. I don't actually accept that we bump it into the next phase, because to fix it, you've actually got to do some fairly strong things. The car parking on the north, I read, perhaps wrongly, but it was primarily to support the what was that thing we put there? The community garden. So is the community garden closed on days when rugby's played? Perhaps so. Perhaps that isn't a bad idea. But I do think a master plan for Trigens Oval needs to do a couple of things, which this doesn't. One is address parking on rugby days, and two is what do you use the oval for during summer, because it's a major asset, and I don't think that's been resolved either. So I feel it's not quite ready to go out for the second phase of it. The components in here, all nice things and you know, hard to argue with. I just don't think it does the complete job if you want a master plan for Trigens Oval that will have it operate well for the community into the future.
Councillor Lemon.
I wasn't going to speak on this, but I feel that I must now. I actually think this isn't a master plan, this is a draft master plan that's going out to community consultation, and I think going out into community we're all aware that there are traffic and parking issues, and when the plan becomes finalised, those issues will be taken into account. And I think by not going out to community consultation now, we miss the opportunity to get some very good ideas from people that live there. And they live there on Saturdays as well, when the rugby's on. And they live there on Saturdays in summer when the rugby isn't on. So I'm sure that if parking is such a huge issue for the local people, it's something that's going to come back as part of our consultation. So I think we should go out to the community, bearing in mind that parking will be an issue, and see what the community's got to say about parking in the first instance. And then look at those parking issues when we finalise what is essentially right now a draft for consultation. So I will support this.
I'd like to see an addition of a table tennis table in amongst all those options. Well, also because that area of Linden Park has actually got a very large Chinese community. Councillor Davis.
Just a question. Given that parking was a huge issue in the original consultation for residents, I mean, well, if it was to come back with solutions, would that represent like quite a large change to the master plan? So if the parking issues were to be addressed, would that be a minor change to the master plan, or would that be a significant change to the master plan?
Through Madam Mayor, I guess it's not easy to answer that question because we don't know the extent of the parking changes that you're suggesting may occur.
Yeah.
Perhaps I can ask a question in return. What are you inferring with the major and minor?
I guess so. My question. So a lot of residents commented on the parking issues, and on page 166, about 20% of them commented in some form or another on parking. In order to address the concerns raised by residents already on parking, would that constitute a large change, or is that an easy fix to fix their concerns raised previously?
Through Madam Mayor, if I can get some advice.
Through the Mayor, that's relatively easy to fix. We can do that.
Can I just ask a question, and then I'll, to the two hands that just went up. I know that when Councillor Dawes and I walked around the area after that particular rugby game, we walked down to that area which is numbers 1 and 12, and it seemed to us at the time that there was potentially an opportunity for some parking on that dirt patch, grotty area adjacent to the house. As I said, where number 12 is on the map. And there seemed to me that there was actually space there for a bit of parking, and I wondered if that had been considered at all during the investigation.
Through Madam Mayor, if I can get a response from Ms Taylor.
Through the Mayor, certainly that could be considered. However, the feedback through the initial consultation process actually indicated the preference for open plan space.
And I love the preference, but then the other point of view is the competing issues to do with parking. Councillor Cornish, you were next, and then Councillor Turnbull.
Thanks. I suppose I'm picking up a question just on this parking issue. Obviously, you've got 19 and 20 listed on the plan there for future parking sites. Would that not, when going out to draft, highlight to people whether or not there will be enough parking? Is it possible to provide some clarity about the number of spaces you're expecting in those spots so that it could actually provide some clarity around whether or not it'll be increased or decreased?
Through the Mayor, certainly we can make that point when we do the community consultation. We can highlight it.
Councillor Turnbull, you're next.
Oh, thank you. I just noticed that there was an information session scheduled for the 26th of November that was cancelled because of COVID. I'm just wondering if that's an information session for the residents, for EMs. Is it going to be rescheduled? It's easy to go and have a look at it and walk around and see when you have it explained to you.
Through the Mayor, yes, we can certainly look at doing that again. That was an on-site catch-up for anyone who would like to be invited, so we can open it to the community or our elected members.
Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Just a question, thanks. Just getting back to the car parking, can anyone tell me what number of car parks were catered for? People are mentioning numbers, but I hadn't been aware of what the actual quantity of car parking is, both on the site and around Trigens Oval.
Through the Mayor, it looks like between 12 and 15 additional car parks.
So what does that make the total?
Through the Mayor, some of them are marked, so I couldn't give you off the top of my head, but probably we're looking at about 40.
Thank you.
If I may help, Madam Mayor, I think when this document goes out, it will add some clarification points about the number of existing parks and the number of parks we're envisaging adding, just for clarity. I'm happy to do that.
I think that's a good idea because people need to be encouraged to think about the parking and traffic as a separate, or as well as the potential development of the oval itself. And if neighbours are concerned, maybe we're all wrong. Maybe the neighbours are okay with the car parking. Maybe they are okay with Tamarack Street being almost impassable at the time there's four-wheel drives on each side of the road. But it has to come from the community, yeah. It has, but I think it can be clarified again. Okay, Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Worship. Look, this is also a very good-looking document. I think it's better than the Penfold Park report, to be truthful. Look, yeah, I really do take the, what we've heard this evening about the Melaleucas. Though I do, I guess, want to give my confidence to administration and the arborists that we have and our team, and I do want to put my faith in their expert opinions. But also in saying that, what was flagged in our deputation this evening was, not deputation, sorry, the question, was the possibility of an alternate use of these trees. I think that just changes things a little bit, and I dare say that community consultation will be fairly hot on feeding back on that one, so I think that will come through to play itself out. Look, I love that this is activating this public space, particularly, I mean, look, I think investigating summer activities is actually one of the underlying principles of being well utilised, and it's listed there in the draft master plan that we want to activate this space all year round. Look, I think the crowds are big at Old Coles games. It's because they're awesome. But look, there are 7 home games a year. There's 14 rounds in the Premier League. And the way these things work is generally the seniors all the way through the juniors share the one fixture. So first thing in the morning, you've got the under-7s, straight through to the Premier League in the afternoon. So what my understanding is there are seven home games per year, and yeah, they're big, busy days. And look, yes, feedback has been on, has mentioned parking, but to be absolutely candid and truthful, I've not received a complaint about the parking outside of this process in my time on council. I think it's something that the residents surrounding the area put up with. But that is not to say more work can't be done. So I think we should get on with getting this out to the community and moving forward with it.
Right, now I will go to Councillor Jones to sum up.
Yeah, look, I agree with Councillor Hubel. I think this is a good report. I think it's a good basis to go forward to our next round of public consultation. I thank Councillor Hughes-Davis for taking out the years and just putting a priority. I think that's a good idea, and perhaps we should do it for all future report. I'm sure the CEO's already written that down on his iPhone. I agree with the parking. I'm getting no grumbles from the residents about the parking. 28 people said they'd like additional parking. It's been put in there. I have to say, Aaron and Kelly showed us round. I have to say I had a bit of a grumble about how much extra parking they were putting in, because it takes up open space. And if you know, we could turn the whole bloody thing into parking if we wanted to, but we'd have no trees. So I think we need to balance the options, perhaps. The rugby club, we speak to them often. The only gripe they've got with parking is the bloody council rangers on a Saturday home game. People try and park on the path on Tamarack Avenue to keep as much roadway open for people to go through as possible, and the rangers go around and ticket them all. So people are trying to do the right thing and clear space for vehicles, and the council rangers treat it as revenue payday. So really, if there's one point from this evening's CEO, is you might want to have a look at that, because I think this plan is good, and I hope you'll vote for it.
Parking on the verge is illegal. All right, those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you. The next one is Councillor Davey, City Master Plan, and it's the last, I think. Thank you, staff, for your patience.
Thanks, Your Worship. Now, I've got an amended motion that I've sent through to Wendy, and it's largely along the lines of the existing motion. It is that Council 1 endorse the draft City Transport Master Plan project plan with environmental considerations included in line with Burnside 2030 and incorporating a broad community engagement process recommended in option 1 of the report. 2, approve a budget adjustment of $70,000 in 2020-2021 through the Q3 budget review process and allocate a further $80,000 in the 2021-2022 financial year. And 3, receive a report on the project plan outcomes with recommendations following the community engagement process. While Wendy's getting that up on the screen, I'll just clarify what my concerns are. It's a huge amount of work that's been done, and I thank Farley and the project team who have developed the plan to this stage. It's very important for our community. However, and for the administration in allocation of our funds. However, it's a little confusing to me that a generic city master plan conjures up image of the whole planning scope for an area. So that includes to me built form, natural form, the planning aspects, the parks, trees and vegetation, roads and footpaths. Whereas, and as well as transport needs. So we do need a transport master plan, as we all know, transport, parking and traffic management is an increasingly complex issue in our inner city suburbs, and it's our challenge to manage this. But the transport needs operate within a huge range of places. Hills Face Zone, across miles of streets and footpaths, and that are both within our control and not, and alongside our valued suburbs, parks, gardens and biodiversity sites. So the demographic affected is not just school children, as this report emphasises, but it's a range of middle and mature age residents and visitors, and along with residential areas, there are schools, also a large range of businesses, plus a range of retirement complexes, churches and homes. So it's hugely important that we work to reduce our car numbers and foster a greener range of options for transport, like pedestrian activity, cycling, public transport, while at the same time we've got to manage a huge volume of traffic barrelling through our suburbs, which is very difficult to manage across our main streets and our subsidiary streets, and we've got to manage safety and residential amenity. So a city transport master plan needs to include consideration of that third plank of our Burnside Strategic Plan, 2030, which is outlined on page 223, which is the environment, and that's been left out of this whole equation. So I think this needs to be included, plus the full range of community demographic needs be represented before it goes out to be considered by our community. And I'd then like to see the project plan developed accordingly and brought back to council prior to community engagement. So that's my take on this. A master plan to me encompasses the whole of the city. I see this as a transport master plan, and I think it should be named accordingly because I think our community will be quite confused by what we're trying to achieve.
Can I just suggest that it gets included like the subject at the top? The city master plan, urban form and transport is included in that first line, and that will make it clear.
Yep.
Do you think urban form's also a problem?
Yes, because it's...
Okay.
it's
I was just using the title at the top of the page, that's all.
I know, I thank you for that, but to me it's a transport. I mean, the aim of it is transport management and traffic management and all of that sort of thing. So, I mean, I'm happy to be guided, but that's how I think our community is going to see it.
If I may respond, Madam Mayor, I am supportive of Councillor Davies' thoughts. My primary purpose when I initially put forward this concept, it was around transport. Yeah. So I am comfortable with this approach.
Right, I seek a seconder. If there is no seconder, then the motion lapses. And Councillor Lemon, you wish to do something else?
Yes, I'll move the original motion. I too had the same problems as Councillor Davey did. When I first started, I thought this is a master city plan. Well, what's this is just about? And as I read it, I realised this is about traffic and parking. And as I read it, I realised this goes back to, I think, the previous council, where we asked for something like this way back then. And I was heartened to see, and if you go to page 209, paragraph 26, in the absence of a plan, we are reactionary, always. And we can't afford to be that. With urban infill taking place to the degree that it does, and with increasing traffic over time, I think we do need a master plan. We know where the hotspots are, and we need to actually look at our corridors. We need to look at it. I think it's very important that this plan gets developed. What I did have a problem with, I have to say, although I'll move the officer's recommendation, is when you go to the table for the option 1 comprehensive development, community, well, the page I'm on is 211, and it's paragraph 35. And if you look at item number 3 on that, community and stakeholder engagement, you've got $63,000 put aside for that. And what I'm interested in is, we do an annual community survey. It costs us about $45,000, maybe $50,000. I'd like to know why we are not doing that for this. Because you're looking at going out, bells and whistles and brochures, and in actual fact, what we're wanting is information from the community. And the best way to get that is through a survey that is valid. And I'd much rather pay for a separate survey, which would be significantly cheaper than $63,000, and get something statistically valid that we could use. There's no reason why we can't do it that way. There's no reason why we need to consult and end up with 463 people when we can get 800 for $20,000 less and better questions. That would be my point in terms of community consultation. I'd like to be convinced that doing it the usual way is the best way to go, because I'm not. But apart from that, this is really overdue. And and I hope you support it, and I will talk some more at the end.
I seek a seconder. Councillor Cornish, do you wish to speak now or?
I'll reserve,
Okay.
Good to see you, answer the question.
Councillor Piggott.
This is overdue. We do need this, no question. It is a transport plan. I'm not convinced it's option one though. I felt at the workshop when we did this, it just presented as a over-spec'd concept. I note that it's not been done like this at any other council, and I think there's a reason for that. And I think the reason is that we have so many constraints in transport. We've got arterial roads that are not going to go anywhere. We've got schools that are not going to go anywhere. We've got Australian road rules that makes parking on the verge outside Trigens Oval illegal. There's so much stuff in transport that, I might like to want to close down this road and close down that road as a resident, but there's so many limitations, and it strikes me that it is the exercise that doesn't... Sure, we've got to invite the community in, we've got to involve them, we've got to ultimately have their buy-in with it. But in terms of what makes up a plan for transport, it strikes me most of it's someone who knows what they're doing, can analyse the demographics, where's the growth coming, what sort of people are there, where do they need to go, all those sorts of things, which is not going to come from any community consultation. It's going to be in the top square of that, the technical expertise. So I actually, now whether option 3 quite does that as well, I don't know, but, well I do. I think option 3 for mine is more of the desktop working with details we already have, and it doesn't go out and ask for, people's opinion on whether they want to close down Barnes Avenue to through traffic. And I think that does the job. It's not about saving money. I just think it's probably a better result if we actually use the information we have, and we've got tons of information in transport and traffic. So I actually don't agree with option 1. I certainly agree with endorsing getting on with it, but I don't agree with option 1. I feel it works with option 3.
Nord, Payneham and Peters have done a traffic study. I haven't seen it. I said I haven't seen it, but they have done a complete citywide traffic study. Yeah. Oh, good. All right. Councillor Turnbull, you are next.
Thank you, Mayor. It says if the budget's adjusted, like for 70,000, where or how does this extra funding impact on other budget lines? A, where do we get it from? And B, will it impact on other aspects of council life?
Through Madam Mayor, I refer that to Mr Cooper. Well, I'll let my GMs decide.
I think while they're talking, we've got a number of other issues that are changing the traffic, and you've mentioned one of them with Barnes Avenue. The redevelopment of Glenunga, the redevelopment of North Morialta high schools will have a massive impact, and we don't even know what the reality of that impact is already. But I was driving around the back streets around behind North Morialta the other day looking at the construction, etc., and those little back streets were all parked out with kids. Knew they were kids because they had P plates on the cars. And so that's something that's, it's a changing dynamic that is going to apply to both of those schools. And in fact, all the other high schools as well. Were they ready now? Okay. So I was killing time.
Thank you. Apologies for the delay. Through the Mayor, the proposal is to split this into 2 across the 2 financial years. A chunk of it will be included in our Q3 budget review for this year, where we believe that we will have some headroom against the expected outturn for this financial year, and the balance will be managed as a cost pressure in the budget for next year.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak or ask a question? Councillor Davey?
I have a question. It says in paragraph 20 on page 209, the master plan will be transformative in its ability to provide clear direction for development growth, identifying opportunities and all of that sort of thing in relation to density, transport and traffic management. So why haven't we included the environment in consideration of this? There's no mention of it in the document at all, because this will impact on the environment.
Through Madam Mayor, it's not because we were reticent in not mentioning it, it's that I feel we've got a number of other plans which adequately cover our focus on the environment. So it's not designed to be forgetful about the environmental impacts. It's just that I feel they're adequately provided for in our other overarching documents, which provide our officers with guidance about the importance of that aspect. Through Madam Mayor, we are in furious agreement on the title.
Councillor Davis.
Can I ask a question? In terms of the consultation that would go out, what are the types of responses that you're looking to get back? Is it, like, say, localised issues or general issues, and what do you think is the best way of achieving the responses and the feedback that you're trying to get?
Through Madam Mayor, I refer that.
Through the Mayor, the option 1 community consultation, we feel like this is a really great approach to actually get solution-focused discussions. We feel that if it was a hard copy survey, we would probably just get issues raised rather than problems solved. So that's why we've actually suggested particular focus groups being this strong, and that's why we've recommended option 1. We feel that listening to the community in regards to their localised knowledge would play a key part in developing this plan.
Councillor Hughes, I wasn't sure if your
No, I
arm
was scratching my head
or
thinking
not,
whether I should
but
speak
if
now or
it
not.
was, you were actually ahead of Councillor Cornish.
Oh,
so
just
okay.
No. Well, I will speak to the motion. Councillor Pickett perhaps confused me earlier, and I think one of the issues is this kind of traffic master plan. It's different than a master plan around a park, which is easy to visualise around what that vision is and perhaps what the issues are, whereas I think transport is going to be very difficult to kind of conceptualise. Well, for me it is. It's like, what is an issue in my ward is different to an issue in your ward. I'm trying to think what it's called. It's very late. Rose Park Turat Gardens. So I think this is, what I see this doing is really saying, getting community feedback around how do people move around the city. And we don't necessarily know that. An engineering study or that background data that we already have is more an engineering view, where this is more that vision and plan around how are we going to see people moving, how do they want to move, and how do we want them to move them and develop that into our spaces. So I can see the value in actually spending and investing money so that we can make it easier. And, you know, for me, it's things like how people might want to be walking their kids to school more now that they're perhaps working from home more flexibly. So how can we incorporate that into our planning, whether it's more pedestrian crossings, more little bits that in the middle of the road so they don't get run over, all of those kinds of things that will form how we want people to move within the city. So I think, yes, it does seem like a lot of money and it might be difficult for us to sit here and think about what we might get out of it, but I think unless we actually ask the questions and get that feedback, we're just going to have this ad hoc approach to all of the issues around traffic within the city. So I think this is not just addressing those specific issues that we see now, it's about making that plan of how we want people to move and how we can be best placed to manage that as a council. So yeah, I think that's why I'm going to support it. It's a difficult concept and different to a park master plan, but I think there's certainly value in consulting and getting the right information so that we can actually get the most value out of the plan.
Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I will certainly be supporting the motion. I've obviously seconded it and I've reserved my right. Look, in terms of some of the things that have been raised, from my understanding, the name City Master Plan, and I understand where the CEO and Councillor Davey are coming from, but I'm reading, you know, in that scope and purpose that potential future iterations of this document could potentially incorporate other aspects of the city. So ideally, we're looking at this and focusing on traffic and the movement around our city and land use and where people want to go and where they want to come from and get around, and how do they do that efficiently without annoying or removing the amenity around the city. So that's where it's starting from. It is a starting place. This is going to be a living, breathing document that will be added to over many, many years, and we can incorporate stuff, but we need to start on this. I'm happy with option 1. In my ward, as Councillor Hughes? Yeah, no, sorry, I was doing that. Just a bit of payback. As Councillor Hughes was sort of mentioning, certainly in my ward, traffic is one of the big issues. Parking and traffic, it is a huge, huge issue that needs to be addressed. And I've had long conversations with some residents that have been around the area for quite some time that remember 40 years ago we had a lot more blocked off streets to main arterial roads. They were closed, but a councillor came along and he was going to get rid of them, and he did get rid of them all. So it's interesting in terms of getting that information, and that's why I'm very supportive of going out for option 1, because as the administration has said, it's about getting those solutions, and we're only going to get that from the locals. You know, I drove here tonight and I saw a car accident at one of the spots that we've called, this chamber has called for a light intersection, traffic lights, and another crash there again. There's a number of those sort of issues that I really do think that we need a plan to push and to guide us through traffic issues at the moment, and it's broader than just traffic, because it's how we interact and get around our city. And I think this is a really good starting spot, and I really hope you support option 1. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Just a question. Pepper Street suffers from cars parking on both sides and nothing can get through. How will this consultation, how will that problem be represented in the master plan for the city of Burnside? Say that specific issue, how will that then be incorporated?
Through Madam Mayor, I can refer that.
Through the Mayor, those particular issues will be captured throughout the consultation process, so I would highly encourage, if you've got residents that have particular issues they would like raised, to actually get involved.
I guess what I'm asking is, can I ask? Yeah, so once that issue is raised, and so we have that feedback, my question is really, will that come up with specific location, you should get a hotspot along Pepper Street, or will it be generally, this is going to be our solution where we get complaints like this? So will it be specific hotspots within the city of saying this is problematic areas, or will it be this is the general approach or general strategy?
Through Madam Mayor, I'd like to think the plan will achieve both, look at both approaches. I think there will be some individually identified problem spots that we have specific solutions where that solution, council may adopt a policy that says, right, where we get this example, this is our preferred solution. And then as officers, we can implement those solutions. So I'm seeing it achieve, well, the short answer is yes to your question, but achieve both outcomes. Does that?
Yes. And then we'll be aware now of specific hotspots.
So through you, Madam Mayor, I'll say my understanding back. So use the Pepper Street example where, if the issue is traffic parked both sides, narrow as a street, we may develop a principle that says where we get this occurrence, our preferred solution is X. And then where appropriate, that solution could be rolled out in other aspects where that example is occurring.
I'm glad that Councillor Hughes mentioned difficulties in conceptualising what this plan would result in, because I was feeling very stupid, and because I went to the workshop and I'm scratching my head saying, but all this is under the control of the state government. What are we going to do? And we've got some clarity now about what we're going to get. And yes, okay, we can say the Feathers at 8 o'clock in the morning, Feathers Roundabout is a nightmare. But do we need to spend $73,000 to consultants to undertake innovative master planning with specialist expertise is required, particularly around integrated transport and urban planning? I mean, I don't get it. What are these consultants going to tell us that stops the Feathers Roundabout being a nightmare at 8 o'clock in the morning? I'm remain baffled. Now, community consultation, if we're going to get what Councillor Davis was suggesting, went out to community consultation and said, what are all the worst traffic spots in Burnside, and let's put them on a list and then work through what we can do them, if anything. But this 73,000 thing, I think it's a total waste of money. I'm not voting for that. I think we should have community consultation. And there's stuff like people want to walk to school, okay, but what are we going to do? I'm scratching my head, so I'm not voting for it.
Okay, I'm aware of the time. I have 4 people, another hand, that's 5. If we don't make a decision now, we're going to be mad panic rushing. It's 20 past. I know I'm asking a little early. I can't see those 5 getting through in 10 minutes. So I'm just explaining this current situation before. Right, so thank you, Councillor Davey. Seconder? We need a time. 15 minutes. To 10:45? Right, seconder? Councillor Piggott, thank you. All those in favour? Lost. Okay, so therefore we have to be awful fast. Okay, moving on. Turnbull.
Thank you, Mayor. It's lucky I talk fast. My question is about page 239. Cycling gets four lines mentioned, cycling. Now, isn't that the way to go in this city? There's a lot of, using bicycles more often. Page 239. And I'm asking is the council planning to use this one? It's the bicycle strategy, May 2012. And it has every route, every street in Burnside, whether it's suitable for cycles or not. And it would be a useful way to stop having to reinvent the wheel and use it again. It's all here. So that's my question.
Council, answer?
Through the Mayor, yes, we can use that. It has actually expired, but we've got a copy of it already.
Yeah, just sort of revise it and revamp it and go for it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dawes.
Can I move it be adjourned? But will that stop me speaking next meeting? If I move that now?
I need to know that. Will? If Councillor Dawes moves for adjourning this, will it stop him from speaking next time?
Well, we can always move for leave and speak again.
Through the Mayor, yes, it would prevent you from speaking next time.
Right.
So I can't?
Correct. But I move it.
Leave. Okay.
Okay.
I will seek adjournment.
You would like to move for an adjournment of this item?
Yep.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Davis? You're seconding it?
I don't need, that's not going to work. But no, I haven't. But no,
Does that go straight to the vote? Wendy, does that go straight to the vote?
Another 5 speakers.
Adjourn until the next meeting, which is the 9th of March. Next council meeting, okay. All right. Does anyone speak on that? No, it's just put to the vote. All right, those in favour of adjournment? Looks like it's against. It's carried. All right, so we've moved and carried that to adjourn it to the next meeting. And I believe that questions on notice have been received. Motions on notice, we didn't have any. Urgent other business? No. Confidential items, no. So I will close the meeting at 10:24. And thank you for your attention.